מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה ומצאי מתוך אבכו מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה ומצאי מתוך אבכו ורב שבט בעמק אבכו והוא יחמוד עלי יחמו ורב שבט בעמק אבכו והוא יחמוד עלי מלך עיר מלוכה ומצאי מתוך אבכו מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה ומצאי מתוך אבכו אוי רבך שבט בעמק אבכו והוא יחמוד עלי יחמו אוי רבך שבט בעמק אבכו והוא יחמוד עלייך כממו Nari me overcoming Lefshi big day sifat Hakhamim sifat Hakhamim It's Nari me overcoming Lefshi big day sifat Hakhamim Hashem Talitzi.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינבך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, הם צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. We have gotten through the book of Bereshit, and now we are starting Exodus. So we're talking about a jump of a couple of hundred years. And when we last left our heroes in the book of Bereshit, let me just share this differently. Let's try differently. So when we last left our heroes, we about the death of Yaakov in chapter 49. And then in chapter 50, the death of... That's it. That's the end of the patriarchal generation. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 12 tribes, in particular, Joseph, right? So we've come a long way. So we started the book of Genesis at the beginning of, well, I claim it's not the beginning. I claim it's not the beginning of the universe, but actually, and I've spoken about this on a number of occasions at a point where it existed but was in a kind of primordial state. So let's say 4 billion years ago. And now at the end of the book of Genesis, we've come to, nobody knows exactly what the year is. But I think they used to tell me in yeshiva that Abraham was 1948 BCE. Let's go with that and figure that this is about now maybe 200 years later or something like that. So let's say approximately 1700 BCE. So covered a couple of billion years. We're not nearly going to cover as many years in the book of Exodus. Far from it, right? The book of Exodus basically all takes starting in Egypt and ending with, let me just stop the video here, and ending basically with the Israelites out in the desert, right? End of Exodus, if I remember correctly, they're still actually right around Sinai, but I have a list of their travels, so we won't even go into that right now. But here we are, we're in the book of Exodus. We're gonna dig in the Hebrew, of course, and if there are any questions or comments, please feel free to chime in, and feel free to follow along with your English or whatever your chosen language is. Maybe you want to practice another language. Okay, this is a good time to do it. Okay, so of course we know that the names of the parshas are usually the first word, but sometimes one of the first words in the parsha. So here we have Shemot, right? And and this is by the rabbis. I don't think that was in place beforehand, but I'm sure it wasn't. And so here we have the second word of the book of Exodus is Shemot, the names, okay? And that's because we're going to go through names. We're going to go through a bit of a genealogy. And maybe what we'll try to do, if I could find this, is we can get some numbers going. So we can expand this, right? Remember, we figured out all of this information last week, that Yosef was born when Yaakov was 91 years old, give or take, because we don't know exactly the gaps between when certain incidents are said. But we figured all this out. Maybe we can extend it even further. We'll see. Okay, so off we go. We are now studying the book of Exodus, Sefer Shemot, the second book of the Chumash of the Pentateuch. Okay. Ele Shemot ben Israel Yaakov ish Ba'u. These children of Israel to eat. Or with Yaakov, in this case, is can be the object, or it can mean. So with Yaakov, man and his household came altar, and the has been for good or bad. That has been our base commentary. The very, I think it's a nice points. I certainly, he's not. Well, as I agree with him, he says it. Put out translation and commentary. So. Okay. There we go. Here. Say the word Egypt. So this is you told the rabbis that the narrow one the form, right? Like alayim, just or not that with Hebrew. So English we have, right, socks or a shoe and shoes, right? And other languages as well, something dual. Okay, so it's that they're a pair, two of them. So I could say in Hebrew, I could say na'alim, which means shoes. That's the plural, or a pair of shoes. It's also used. So mitzrayim, name for Egypt, and so we hear the control from the underlying word tsar, highlighted. Probably can't. Right there. Second tsar, mitzar. The narrowness or the narrow strait. Sometimes it translated is, and then the dual of the narrow straits. Some people say it's not the restricted place there. We're spiritually, but let's do that misconception right now. It does mean that that's not the word. It's an idea, but it's not the head working well. Shabbat shalom. All right, Cairo, Egypt. Egypt, Misr. Okay. Let's see if we can find etymology. I don't know if it's in the Wikipedia article. History, prehistory, and ancient names. In ancient Egypt. No, it doesn't say names. I wanted to say names. 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 There we go. I thought I said names. Okay. So let's go back. Egyptian name. So I'm not even going to try reading this phonetics. Something like Hatargputh. Misr. Okay. So here we go. Misr, related to Misraim, is the classical Quranic, Arabic, and modern official name of Egypt, while Masr is the local pronunciation in Egyptian Arabic. The name is of Semitic origin, directly cognate with other Semitic words for Egypt, such as Hebrew Misraim. The oldest attestation of this name for Egypt is the Akkadian Misru, related to Misru, Misaru, meaning a border or a frontier. Okay. The Neo-Assyrian Empire used the derived term Musur. Okay. And then we could just read on. Why the heck not? The ancient Egyptian name of the country was Hamat, which meant referring to the fertile black soils of the Nile floodplains, distinct from desert, or redland of the desert. On and on and on. So we don't have to linger there. The point is that Mitzrayim does not mean the narrow straits, right? It comes from a Semitic word, which apparently means the border or the frontier. Now, I'd have to look it up more, but Misraim in Hebrew, so that is definitely in the dual form, right? So we see here that, where is it? That, let's say, where was the Akkadian? Misiru, right, is not in the dual form, but in the Hebrew, it comes out in the dual form, okay? Mitzrayim, okay? For whatever reason. So I'd have to research it more, but I do remember looking it up. And I think that the reason is, or might be, or speculated that it is that there are two Egypts. There are always two Egypts spoken about when Egypt is mentioned. So what are the two Egypts that are usually spoken about? Oh, here's Ariel in bed. Hello, how are you guys? Hold on, I'll unmute.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? How's Bat Yam?
Oh, it's great. It's great. It's cold, but it's great. It's
Yeah,
by the ocean, and it's in Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Good to be back home, huh?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Excellent. Welcome back.
It really is wonderful.
And
Thank you.
And you guys have been spending some time with Zilpa?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, we were there this afternoon. We were there.
About 3 hours.
Yeah, for about 3 hours. We had lunch with her.
What
a wonderful lady.
Yeah, she's a very, very special person, Zilpa. She is.
Yeah.
She's a very, very special person. She absolutely is. I've known her for many years, and I've always loved that family. Too bad you never got to meet her ex-husband Boaz, who also was a very, very special person. But
yeah, we would have loved to
wait for the resurrection.
The stories we hear about him. He must have been quite a guy.
Yeah, he was a really incredible person. All right, so we're going to move on now. I'm going to mute you guys. So, okay, so we were talking about Egypt being, at least in Hebrew, in the dual form Mitzrayim, which means the two Egypts. And so what are the two Egypts we're talking about? Well, Egypt is usually divided into Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, even to this day, right? So we look at a map. Oh, let's see. How can we do this? Google Maps, Egypt. Hello. Why is it not doing it? Oh, the internet's acting up. Okay, well, I'll do it now because my internet is acting up. But we know that the Lower Egypt basically means the flat plains along the Nile Delta and where the Nile River is flat. And then if you go further south, you go up into the Egyptian highlands. Eventually, you end up in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and all of these areas. And so those are up in the mountains. That's where the source of the Nile River is. So as you move south along the Nile River, you're going to go more and more to the highlands, and that's called Upper Egypt, just because it's highlands rather than lowlands. So Egypt has always been thought of as two lands, Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, and that very possibly is the source of the name Mitzri, not the Mitzri, Mitzir part, which we saw is related to the word frontier or border, but the idea that in Hebrew, at least, it's in the dual form there. So here we go. So each person along with his household came, And now we're going to get a list of names, right? The name of the parsha is Shemot, and here the
Melech,
second word of the parsha is Shemot. The names. Yes.
Could I just interject very quickly? I don't know if you knew this, and it's something that might be interesting. If you look at the Perot's headdress, it's made of two parts. There's the serpent on the front and the robe at the back, and that came about from the joining of the two kingdoms, the upper and lower kingdoms.
I did not know that. Okay, so basically the pharaoh became the head of both Egypts, the lower Egypt and upper Egypt. So you're saying the snake represents the lower Egypt, and what was it on the back that represents the upper Egypt?
It was just the head covering, the robe. I guess what you call the kafaya now. Just
got it. Cool. I wish we had an Egyptologist here who could give us a lot more information. But yeah, thank you, Ben. No, I did not know that. All right, thanks. All right, we're gonna go on. Okay. So Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Okay, so we have the again, as is almost always the case, we have the sons that are being listed in order of their birth: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yisachar, Zvulun, Binyamin. So those are now okay. So these are now not listed in order. The first four are listed in order of their birth, but certainly Binyamin is not. But they are basically these are the sons of Leah. These are the sons of Leah. This is the one son of Rachel that came down there, right? Binyamin, because Joseph was already down there. And then we have the sons of the concubines, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Okay, so it's definitely listed in a hierarchical order. First, the sons of Leah, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. And then the one son of Rachel. And then the two sons of the concubines, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Okay, so as always we see in the case, or almost always we see, things are always very hierarchical. Everybody knows their place. Everybody knows their relationship to everyone else. Okay. Waihi, which is one of the big proofs, or one of the proofs that I always use for patriarchal descent of the Torah. Right, we see that everybody knows exactly the Beit Av, the father's house that they come from, and this is one of the clearest proofs in the Tanakh of patrilineal descent versus matrilineal descent, because the matrilineal, the mother's houses are never traced out. Sometimes the mother is mentioned. Once in a blue moon, let's say you go up a generation or two, you might know the grandmother, but that's about all you're going to know. We never have the lineage traced according to the mothers. We always have the lineage traced according to the fathers. One of the clearest proofs in the Tanakh that if you need any proof, it's just obvious. That that descent and belonging and status, I won't say status, that's a kind of a loaded word, but position within Israel is determined by your patrilineal ancestry, your father's house, your father's status, or your father's position. Okay, so then there are many more proofs, but that's one of them. Okay. So Vayihi kol nefesh Yosei Yerech Yaakov Shivaim Nafesh Yosef Haya Misraim. So 70 people. Okay. 70 people not came down, but 70 people in total. We'll talk about this number in a second. Okay. Verse 6. Wa Yamoth Yosef V'chol Ehau V'chol Hador Hahu Uvnei Yisrael Paru Wa Yishrachsu Wa Yirbu Wa Ya'amsu B'ma'od Ma'od Wa Timole Ha'ares Otom. So Israel, basically, they were fruitful and multiplied. That's paru, but yirbu. And we have another word in here, which is ishratsu, which is usually understood as swarmed or multiplied, like swarming. It's actually doesn't usually have a good connotation, but in this case it does. But when you talk about a sheretz, it's usually or the animals or shorets, that they're basically swarming animals. So basically means they swarm, like they almost, you would use it to talk about locusts or something like that. It is used to talk about locusts actually. So It usually doesn't have a positive connotation, but obviously here it does. It just means they just multiplied and filled the land like, let's say, locusts would very rapidly, okay? And they grew great in number, or they became great in size, very, very much. And the land became full of them. So let's talk a second about the 70 people that came down. So we did this last year. I'm not going to go through it in detail again, but we could look at it. So we have a count here, okay, of the 70 people that are being spoken about, at least speculation of what the 70 people that were being spoken about are, okay? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but let's point out a couple of things. So first of all, we see that in this list of 70, okay, so this does not include, I'm sorry, it does include, wait, I just have to do one quick thing here. Okay, so it includes Joseph, is in the list of 70. It includes Ephraim and Menashe, okay, who are already down there. Okay, so it includes the people who were already down there, right? When it speaks about 70, right? So where's the 70 again? So Vahi kol nafesh yotzei yeref Yaakov shivim nafesh, right? So it was that all of the people, the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, or 70 people, and Yosef was in Mitzrayim. So a lot of people would leave Yosef out of the count because it seems to say, but Yosef was in Mitzrayim and he's not counted in the 70. But the fact of the matter, it says we're talking about the 70 people that came out of Yaakov's loins. So Yosef is included carefully last year. I mean, we went through it in detail last year, right? So Menashe and Ephraim are counted, even though they're already down there. Okay. But Yaakov is not counted, right? So he's not included in the 70 because we're talking about all the descendants of Yaakov. Okay. Are that of all of these, we only have 3 women that are mentioned. Okay, Leah, who ostensibly was still alive, she had not yet died, Yaakov's first wife. Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov, that is mentioned explicitly in the book of Genesis, the only daughter of Yaakov that's mentioned explicitly in the book of Genesis. And Serach, who was the daughter of Asher. Okay. So only 3 women are mentioned, which is kind of very strange. And we came up with a number of explanations for this. The first possible explanation is that that's just the way it is. It's divine. They just all had a lot of boys. But I don't really buy that, because this would be, I mean, we're talking about an incredible amount of or incredibly small probability, right? If the chance of a boy versus a girl is, let's say, 50%, then so that's 1/2, and then you in combinatorics you would multiply 1/2 times 1/2 times. You'd get an incredibly small possibility that this was the case, that there was so many boys and so few girls. So another explanation we came up with is that that the women that are mentioned are the ones that have some kind of importance, in the story. Okay, for one reason or another, that there were other women, but they're not mentioned. Women are often not mentioned in the Torah, because that's the culture, is that the men were the ones out there, doing stuff, and the women were the ones who were basically taking care of the house. So they had kind of a behind the scenes role, and this is reflected many times in the Torah. So those are the 2 explanations that I can consider, and I think the second one is much more probable than the first one. Okay, let's see if Robert Alter has anything to say about this number 70. So that's in verse 5. So 70 persons. So some ingenuity is required to come up with an exact total of 70, but the Bible uses numbers as symbolic approximations. So he's saying that, so after 7 and 10, one moves to 40. which is used for units of time rather than people. Then 10 times 7 or 70, here indicating a substantial clan, the nucleus of a people. So he's basically saying it's allegorical, it's an expression, it's an idiom. When you say 70 people, you mean specifically 70 people. But I don't think that's the case at all, because when you do the count, I mean, this is the count of the people who are mentioned explicitly by name, okay? There are no other people, there's no one more, and there's no one less, and it comes out to exactly 70. So I think that Robert Alter is clearly wrong in this case, okay? But this would be a long talk, and we're not going to get into it right now. We're certainly not going to rehash it. Maybe what we could do is let's look very briefly at the one outlier, the one woman that we don't already know, right? We've all heard of Leah and Dinah, but have we heard of Serach, the daughter of Asher? Well, let's go take a look at that. That's Genesis 46:17. So let me just open it in a new tab here. And Shabbat Shalom Qara'im, Shabbat Shalom Yoshi Ben. Shabbat Shalom. So we said that's 46:17. Okay. Okay. Uvenei Asher Yimna Waishwa Waishri. No, Ishwi Ubiri'ah Wa Serah Ahukam. Uvenei Ubiri'ah Hever Malkiel. Okay. So here it mentions their sister Serach. Okay. Why does it mention her and not any other girls? Well, let's see if she appears anywhere else. So she's mentioned in Numbers 26:46. Let's go take a look at that. And I think it's just, again, with a genealogy. I'll just go to the English to make it go quickly. Right, so here we go. This is just a genealogy. This is why the book of Numbers is called the book of Numbers, because there are a number of counts, right? So this is the count. This is the second count, the second census, okay? And she's mentioned again. And other than that, she's mentioned in Second Chronicles. And again, it just says pretty much the same thing. I'm sorry, First Chronicles 7:30. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Isua, etc., and Sarah was their sister. So, I mean, these verses seem to imply that she was the only girl born to all of these generations, right? But it just does not seem probable, unless you want to attribute it to some kind of divine intervention, or some kind of divine, direction of the sons of, or the children of Yaakov, whereby, let's see, that would mean that there were exactly. Where we go here. So this would mean that there were exactly, well, we could take away Leah, and we could take away Leah because she was not a daughter, she was a wife. So there's 69. That means 2 out of the 69 of the descendants, all of the descendants of Yaakov, 67 were boys and 2 were girls. That would be 1 out of 33 and a half. So that would mean 2 to the power of 33 and a half chance of such a thing happening, if I'm doing this correctly. I might actually not be doing it correctly, but close enough. Okay, I'd have to think about it a bit more, but 2 to the power of 33. So the chances of that happening are this number here. Let's see what number this is. So this is 1 in 8,589,000,000, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess you can attribute it to divine intervention, or I guess you can attribute it to the fact that, oops. Hello? Yes, Ariella, you want to say something? It says I can't unmute you. Your mic is not corrected. It is not connected. Let's try it again. I can't unmute you because they chose to mute themselves. You have to unmute yourself, Ariella. Still can't hear you. Shabbat Shalom, Ricky. April Scurry. Ariella, you're muted. I see your mouth moving, but nothing's coming out. Okay, we'll do it later. All right. Anywho, so those are the two explanations that I can come up with. I really can't come up with much of anything else. We can take a look at some other commentaries to get some ideas on this. We can go to our good old Ibn Ezra, and then just for some, some laughs and giggles, we can go to Rashi. I'm sure he'll say something stupid as he always does, but once in a while he surprises us. This is something that's semi-intelligent. But let's do it. We're going to go to Ibn Ezra. Enough. Ibn Ezra, Exodus, chapter 1, verse, what's it again? Shibim, verse 5. Verse 5. Opinion matters. I love it. Okay. I'll just read in English to go through it faster. No, that's not what it's talking about. Yitzayere. So I don't know if it relates to the idea of 70 at all. No, he's not relating to it there. Yitzayere. And then he goes into 1:6. Okay, so let's read this. That came out of the loins of Jacob. Loins allude to the male organ, which is located near the loins, obviously. It is similar to, and Saul went to cover his feet. All right, we're not going to focus on that. The offspring of Jacob who descended to Egypt really numbered 69, not including Jacob, who should be counted first. I disagree with that count, but hey, I'm not going to argue with the Ibn Ezra. He might be right. He's a great commentator. The Pentateuch, therefore, first states et Yaakov, with Yaakov, the meaning which is, as we've noted earlier, in the first listing of Yaakov's descendants in the Torah portion, Vayigash, Scripture states, and these are the names of the children of Israel came unto Egypt, Jacob and his sons, Genesis 46:8. Thus with Jacob, all the souls of his sons and his daughters descended from Jacob and Leah were 33. The verse, your fathers went down to Egypt with 70 souls, Deuteronomy 10:22, is proof that Jacob is counted among the 70, for Jacob had a soul. Similarly, Joseph and his two sons who in Egypt are also included in 70. So Ibn Ezra kind of contradicts himself because he's saying that it includes Jacob, or it includes Ephraim and Manasseh, who are already there. And so they didn't go down with Jacob, but includes Jacob because he went down. I disagree with this. I've gone through the count before, and I've explained why I came up with this particular count. And that's it. We're not going to belabor it because we'll be here for hours. Okay? So that's what I think. Okay. Yosef Hayab in Mitzrayim. Okay. Verse 6, Exodus 1:6. Okay. Exodus 1:6. Why Yomot Yosef Mechol Ehau Bechol Hador Hahu. Verse 7. Uvnei Yisrael. Oh, we read this already. So they swarmed and filled the land of Egypt, right? So we see a pattern. We see a pattern which starts on the first journey ever of the children of Israel down to Egypt, which is we're originally welcome into a country with open arms. Come down, we really want you here. You guys are great. You guys are you Jews. You help our economy. You're smart. You become professors. You become all of this kind of stuff. And then after a while, we kind of overstay our welcome, or we get comfortable in the land, or we become too numerous in the land, and then we become a threat to the native population. And then suddenly the native population starts to turn on us and eventually either throws us out, kills us, or any combination thereof, right? We're seeing this right now in the United States, okay? We were welcome into the United States. I mean, Jews were already in New Amsterdam. In fact, the first synagogue ever in the United States, which I visited in person, which is located in Newport, Rhode Island, was, well, let's look at that for a second because this kind of illustrates the point. So this is the Torah synagogue. So on December 2nd, 1763, this is before the Declaration of Independence. This is when it was when it was colonies. Many settlers traveled to the American blah, 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 Jews. On December 2nd, 1763, members of the Jewish community of Newport, Rhode Island, witnessed the dedication of the Torah synagogue, the first synagogue in the American colonies. The synagogue was named for Isaac Torah, its first officiating rabbi. Torah became a center of the thriving Jewish community. And then it goes on to something else. So organized Jewish community and life in Newport dates to 1658, when 15 families arrived from overseas to establish a congregation in the growing seaport. For more than 100 years, the community relied on correspondence with rabbis in Europe to sustain the religious traditions in the New World, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so the point that I wanted to make is that Jews were already welcome or came to the New World, to America, at a very, very early date. Now, I happen to know for a fact that although these Jews came from, one second here, I believe they came from the Netherlands. I might be wrong about that, actually. But they were Portuguese Jews, and there was a huge movement in the Middle Ages, I believe the 16 or 1700s, maybe a little bit early, of Portuguese Jews, I guess earlier, right? Because they were thrown out in 1492 from Spain, and soon after that, in 1497, they were thrown out of Portugal, and I think that's when many of them moved to the Netherlands. So there was a huge influx of Portuguese Jews to the Netherlands. Some became crypto Jews. There's a community which I visited personally a couple of months ago in northern Portugal called Belmonte, where you have a community of Portuguese crypto Jews who just basically recently came to light, meaning within the past 100 years. At any rate, there was a huge influx of Portuguese Jews who were thrown out of Portugal and moved to the Netherlands. And then they came when the Netherlands took over parts of the New World, right? New York was originally called New Amsterdam. Then these Portuguese Jews who were in the Netherlands came to the United States, and this Torah synagogue was actually a synagogue of Portuguese Jews that had come to the Netherlands, I believe. It's been a while, so I looked it up. So I always like to be, precise with my information. I'd have to look it up again, but we're not going to do that now. Anyway, the point is, getting back to here, is that Jews, we're always, one way or another, we move around the world and we're welcomed into a country, and things are great at first, and then suddenly things turn, right? It's like the honeymoon period is over, and then the honeymoon turns into a nightmare, right? And we're seeing that now in Egypt. And yeah, maybe too successful. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. We also tend kind of to just, I don't know. I think it's more complex than just being too successful. I think honestly, you can say that it's divine, right? We're never supposed to feel at home or settled in foreign lands. You could say that it's that we leave the Torah, and so we start using our Jewish soul, shall we say, or our blessing as being the chosen people in ways that are not correct, and so that actually ends up hurting more than helping. We could see that with the amount of liberalism that has been promoted and done by the Jews in the United States over the past 70 years or so, right, which has completely transformed the United States of America, basically from a Judeo-Christian nation into, I don't know, God only knows what it is right now, a Baal worshiping Sodom and Gomorrah or something like that. Okay, I can't say the Jews were all completely responsible for it, but they had a large part in it. There's, without a doubt, they were the leaders in that trend. So eventually, we just overstay our welcome, and we become a stink in the eyes of the native population. This is the pattern we see everywhere. There is no exception to this pattern. I can't think of any country where we Jews have lived for a long period of time, without eventually becoming a stink in the eyes of the native population. And that process is certainly well on its way in the United States of America right now. Okay, so So what? Yakom Melech Hadash al Misraim Asher lo Yadar et Yosef. So a new king was put over Egypt who did not know of Yosef, who did not know who Yosef was. Okay, I wrote an article many years ago in 2008 when Barack Hussein Obama became the so-called president of the United States of America, that was the turning point. He was the first president, at least in my recent memory that I can think of, that actually you could tell hated Jews. I mean, truly despised them. So that to me was a major turning point in the United States of America. And since then, we have seen a huge rise in anti-Semitism, especially among blacks. For whatever reason, the blacks seem to completely despise the Jews. I have my reasons why, but I won't get into it right now. At any rate, to me, that turning point in the United States, all of the previous presidents, okay, maybe they didn't love the Jews, but they felt a responsibility towards the Jews and towards Israel in one way or another. And then when Barack Hussein Obama rose to power, that was the first time that I was in the United States at that point, I sensed a major shift in the relationship between the Jews and America. And then, of course, after that, you had all of these, what is it, the boycotts against Israel, or the divestment and the boycotts and an increase in anti-Semitism and all kinds of stuff that are going on. So definitely our fate in the United States of America as Jews has definitely passed the turning point, and we see now that the situation is getting worse and worse. On a regular basis, I now see articles about anti-Semitic incidents, and I see articles saying that anti-Semitic incidents are up, God knows, 300%, 400%, 500%, 1,000%. Each article says something different, but times are definitely changing. We have definitely overstayed our welcome in the United States, and we have definitely begun to cause a stink in the nose of the native population. And it's only a matter of time before it ends up with expulsions, concentration camps, or God knows what. I mean, it doesn't always end up with holocausts, right? That was, the Germans are very organized, so they were able to pull that off. I don't know if the Americans will pull off such a thing, but it's certainly, like in the case of Spain, for instance, and in the case of Portugal, it ends up with a complete expulsion and inquisition and certainly the killing and the torturing of some Jews and the expulsion. That seems to be the more usual scenario. But we shall see. I keep on telling my fellow Jews, get out of the United States while you still can. Okay, so here we have a new king. We don't know the name of the king. There's all kinds of speculation on what the name of this king is. You could sit and read 10 different articles, and they'll tell you it's 10 different kings. Verse 9, Wayomer el amo, hine am b'nei Yisrael, rav wa asum mimenu. So he said to his people, the children of Israel are larger in number and greater in size than us. Okay, so there's this fear of a growing population that could take over the place, right? The numbers of the Jews are getting too large. Verse 10. Hava it hakma lo pen yiribe wa hayaki tikraena nil hama wa nosaf gam hu al sonenu wa nilham banu wa ala min haaras. So let's get smart with these people. Let's deal a little bit craftily with these, Israelites, lest they increase even more in number, and a situation happens whereby a war occurs and they join our enemies and they fight against us, and then they leave the land. So it's a strange statement. Why does it say that they leave the land? So were the Jews enslaved at this point? No, but maybe there was a fear that they just were, they were providing enough services, just as workers, landowners, farmers, et cetera, that the Pharaoh, whoever it was, felt that the economy would suffer greatly, or the country would suffer greatly if the Jews actually left. But at the same time, he didn't want them. he basically wanted to keep them there, but put them under his thumb, to keep them as a population that would continue contributing to the country, but not allow them to potentially join the enemies and the enemies of Egypt, right? And there were constantly wars and border skirmishes going on throughout the entire history of Egypt. Again, if we had time, we could delve into. We could speculate exactly what time this was and what border skirmishes were going on, etc. But we're not going to do that. Why? Yasimu alav sare misim nima'an anoto b'sivlotam. Why even are miskanot lef'aro et piton wa'et Ramses. So they placed upon them, the Egyptians placed upon them, meaning the Israelites, Sare Misim, usually translated as taskmasters. Misim, mas, in modern Hebrew means attacks, but what it really means in ancient Hebrew is kind of a conscription. Let's see if we can get an exact definition of it. So here, mas or mis, body of forced laborers, forced service, task workers, task work serfdom, right? So that's basically, here we go, a body of forced labor. So it's people who are conscripted to work, who are forced into work. Basically, it's conscription, right? So Sare Misim are the overseers of these conscripts, okay, often translated as the taskmasters, in order to to oppress them, or what's the usual translation? Afflict them in their with their suffering. And so basically, he's going to take this population and keep them so busy and keep them so oppressed that they're not going to leave. He doesn't want them to leave, but at the same time, they're not going to get out of control, right? They're not going to cause a threat to the regime, right? We know from the United States of America what happens to you January 6th if you cause a threat to the regime, right? The empire strikes back. And so here's the empire striking back against the Israelites, and they're going to keep them in the country, but they're going to enslave them to keep them, to make sure they don't get out of control. And then some more measures will be taken, of course, as we know. So they were put to work building. Well, miskanot is usually translated as storage cities, but it's not really clear what that word means. Maybe we could take a look at a commentary too to get an idea of what it means. It's usually understood as storage cities. Let's see how Robert Alter translates that one. Verse 11. Store cities. And maybe as a comment on that. No, he doesn't. We'll take a look at Ibn Ezra. Oops. Okay. So they built Pitom and Ramses, two store cities. And we saw Ramses mentioned earlier. Pitom we did not see mentioned earlier. So this is the first and only occurrence of the word Pitom, of the city Pitom. But Ramses we saw mentioned earlier, specifically in Genesis 47:11. So let's just take a look at that in the English. Okay. So Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them the possession in the land of Egypt and the best of the land in the lands of Ramses as Pharaoh had commanded. So what do we learn from this? We don't learn that much, but what we do learn is that we know that the Israelites were settled in the land of Goshen, which is ostensibly up in the north near the Nile Delta. And so Ramses must be within Goshen or vice versa. Okay, we could look it up and see if we can get any information on Ramses. Okay, so this may or may not be the same one. Here, biblical Ramses. So let's read this. So let's go this up a bit. So chapter 47 of the biblical book of Genesis states that the Hebrews were given the land of Goshen to reside in, but also that Joseph settled his father and his brothers in the best part of the land, in the land of Ramses. Okay, the book of Exodus mentions Ramses, both spells blah, blah, as one of the cities on whose construction the Israelites were forced to labor. That's Exodus 1:11. That's where we are right now. And from where they departed on their Exodus journey. Understandably, this Ramses was identified by biblical archaeologists with P. Ramses of Ramses II. Still earlier, the 10th century biblical exegete Rabbi Sadi Yagon believed that the biblical site of Ramses had to be identified with Ein Shams. Just because some ancient rabbi says it doesn't make it true. When the 21st dynasty moved the capital to Tanis, P. Ramses was largely abandoned, and the old capital became a quarry for ready-made monuments, but it was not forgotten. Its name appears in a list of 21st dynasty cities, and it had a revival under Shishak, usually identified with the historical pharaoh Shoshenq of the 22nd dynasty, 10th century BCE, who tried to emulate the achievements of Ramses. The existence of the city as Egypt's capital as late as the 10th century BCE makes problematic the claim that the reference to Ramses in the Exodus story is a memory of the area of Ramses II. In fact, the shortened term Ramses in the place of the original P. Ramses is first found in the first millennium BCE texts. So I think what this is saying is that it is not P. Ramses, that it's a different city. Okay? But at any rate, okay, so Ramses II, so here, moved the capital of Egypt to P. Ramses because of its military potential. Thus, he built storehouses, docks, and military facilities in the city, which is why Exodus 1:11 calls the site a treasure city. And here we see it's not translated as a storage city, but as a treasure city. I guess the same general idea. Okay, so again, this is a long topic, and we're not going to get into it. But just to point out that Ramses is mentioned as the place that the Israelites were settled in Genesis 47. Okay, any questions, any comments at this point? So Yoshi Ben says, if I could get out without being responsible for my debt and had the money to get out and had somewhere to go in Israel without being hunted, I would leave in an instance. Okay, Yoshi Ben, let me tell you, you can get out without being responsible for your debt. If you owe banks or credit cards, they will not chase you down in Israel unless you owe like millions and millions of dollars. So you could leave tomorrow, and not only will you not be responsible for your debt, you will be suddenly magically free of your debt. So I would recommend to you, grab whatever money you have, grab whatever cash you can, transfer it out of the United States of America, put it in an Israeli bank or a European bank or whatever bank you like, and leave tomorrow. And you will magically be cleared of all your debt. And you know what? If you owe that debt to the banks, screw them. I mean, they are scum. They are evil. So they can they can write it off. That's their problem, not yours. I don't think you have to feel any kind of any kind of moral obligation to the banks, because they certainly don't feel any moral obligations to the people they quote unquote serve. So there's your answer. I have a feeling you're not going to do it, because I have a feeling that, I don't know you personally, but quite frankly, most of the people who say they want to move to Israel always have some kind of excuse, and really they don't want to, but they usually hang it on an excuse. If you want to speak to me privately, I have extensive experience about moving to Israel, and I could give you some very, very practical advice. Feel free to contact me on WhatsApp. Okay, let's move on. All right, כאשר יענו אותו, כן ירבה וכן יפרוס, ויחוסו מפני בני ישראל. So the more that they oppressed them, the more they multiplied, and the more that they yifrotz, they burst out or spread out. ויחוסו מפני בני ישראל, and they feared. Okay, the underlying root for yakutsu is chetz, and we've spoken about this. Let me just make sure. It might be a different root, actually. 1 second. Yeah. Just 1 second. Yes, so it is related. Okay. So yakutsu, it comes from the underlying root chetz, kuf sadi, which means to put an abrupt end to or to stop. For instance, we have the word kayetz, which is usually translated in modern Hebrew as summer. But what it really means is it's the end of the grain harvests. So after in the land of Israel, you harvest the wheat. So first we harvest the barley, and around Passover time, then around Shavuot time, festival weeks, we harvest the wheat. After that, the harvesting stops, ceases for a while until the fall fruits are ready, right? First the grapes and the figs, and then later on the pomegranates and the olives and the dates. Well, the dates are a little bit earlier. At any rate, so you have this period where the harvesting of the grain stops, and that's the Karaites. That's literally the stopping point or the cutoff point. Okay, it's usually translated as summer, but I think that's a poor translation. But here, but the underlying root is kuf sadi katz, which means to come to a sudden stop or to halt. We also saw that when someone wakes up from a dream, it is said yakutsu, that their dream ended, their dream was cut off. Okay, it's even possible I'd have to trace it down, but it's possible that the word word cuts or the root kates is related to the modern English word cut, because if I'm not mistaken, cut can be traced back to the Latin cortare. Okay, and cortare already, so we already have it as far back as the Latin. And kates, court, kates in German, kurz, right? So that kurz already sounds a lot like kates. Cortare, which means to cut in Latin, if I'm not mistaken, already sounds a lot like kates. So I don't like to just throw out, speculative or folk etymologies, but if we trace it down, we might very well find out that Latin came from the Greek or the Aramaic, or came through the Greek, and then the Greek can be traced back to the Aramaic, and the Aramaic can be traced back to Hebrew or to the Semitic languages. Well, Aramaic is already a Semitic language. Who knows? Just speculation at that point, but it might very well be the case. At any rate, what we have here is yakutsu. So literally, so they translate it as dreaded. Okay, because they became so numerous and spread out so much, the Egyptians dreaded, or had dread before the children of Israel, but really the underlying root is kaitz. It's the same root as stop short. So you could say they stopped short, or they stopped suddenly in fear, or their breath cut short. We'd have to dig down exactly what the relationship is. Maybe we can get it from the BDD. Let's see, but something along those lines. The breath was cut short, or they stopped in their tracks, thinking about Israel. Okay, so here we have kutz, feel a loathing, abhorrence, sickening dread. Okay, connection of meanings, compare Aramaic kant, loathe or fear. Let's see, abhor, imperfect. Feel kitz. So, okay, primitive root. So here, this is what the Strong says: a primitive root, identical with kutz, through the idea of severing oneself from, or to be causatively disgusted or anxious, abhor, be distressed, be grieved, loathe, vexed, be weary. So here, the Strong's is relating it back to kus, which we said means to stop short. Again, kayetz is the stopping of the grain harvest. Yakutsu is waking up from a dream suddenly abruptly stopping. You have a dream and suddenly you're awake. Your dream suddenly stopped, but you can remember your dream. That's exactly what yakutsu means when it's used. It's basically always used when it speaks about, let's say, Yosef having a dream and then he awoke, or or Pharaoh having his dream and then he awoke, right? Actually, I don't think it mentions in the case of Yosef, but in Pharaoh for sure it does. He had his dream and then he awoke. I think it mentions in the case of the cupbearer to Pharaoh and the baker, right? Yakutsu, right? They suddenly woke up, right? So that's the idea here. Okay, so these people are like stopped short in their tracks, or in this case, so they're severing themselves from, and to be causally made disgusted or anxious. Okay, there we go. So let's go back here. Yakutsu mifnei bnei Israel. So I'm gonna translate it as they stopped short in their tracks before the children of Israel. We can look at a couple of other interpretations of this. How can you get in touch with me? Give me a private text and I will give you my WhatsApp number. Okay? Give me a private text and I'll give you my WhatsApp number. Okay? So, we wanted to look up, let's see how Robert Alter translates this. So this is Exodus 1:12. So Robert Alter translates it as loathe. And let's see if he has anything to say about that. So it did multiply, loathe. So here we go. So William H.C. Prop, whoever that is, he grabs all these academics from all over the place. I don't even know where he gets half of them from, but he pulls them out of his little magic hat, has made the ingenious suggestion that the loathing is a response to the reptilian swarming of reproductive activity exhibited by the Israelites. Okay, interesting. Let's see what the Ibn Ezra, if anything, has to say about that. So that's 112. So as I always point out, I love the Ibn Ezra. He is an amazing, amazing commentator, just as opposed to Rashi, who is literally the worst Torah commentator I've ever come across, with the possible exception of Meir Chavi. No, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry. Okay. Kasher ya'anu oto yifrotz. So he doesn't really mention yakutsu. My battery's low. I have to take a break for 1 second. Okay, let's take a 2-minute break. I'm going to put on a bit of music. I just have to get my charger and plug it in. So just give me 1 second. We will be right back.
שמיים וארץ, אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. אוי אוי מקימי מעפר דל, מהשפות ירים אביון, אוי להושיבי עם נדיבי אמור, תגנאי נאי 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 תנאי נאי נאי תנאי נאי 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 נאי. השם אלוקינו המקביל לשבת, אוי בשמיים ובארץ, אוי מקימי מעפר דל, מהשפות ירים אביון, אוי להושיבי עם נדיבי אמור.
All right, we are back. Welcome back to the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. Where did I put my water? There it is. H2O. Okay, so let's do this. Alrighty, so we were talking about the word yakutsu, so they got scared of, they stopped short in their tracks before the children of Israel. There was no Ibn Ezra. Let's look at Rashi for some kicks and giggles. Once in a blue moon, he says something intelligent, but usually it's just, it's like, I've been seeing a lot of, watching a lot of videos lately about narcissistic people, relationships with narcissistic people who like suffer from like severe narcissistic problems. And one of the things that these videos talk about is word salad. Like you say one thing and then the narcissist just responds with like random unrelated concepts and ideas, basically deflection. That's what I feel like when I'm reading some of Rashi's commentary. It's like sometimes there's absolutely nothing directly to do with the issue at hand, but let's give it a shot. So this is Exodus 1:13. We got to go back here. Now we go to Rashi. Exodus 1:13. By the way, they call that word salad. Farech, so he doesn't really relate to it at all. Yakutsu, he does say. Okay, so he says, כתוב חייהם רבותינו דרש כי קוצים היו בעיניהם. So as usual, Rashi makes no sense at all. So he says that our rabbis understood this or taught that it meant ki kutzim hayu ba'neihem. It was like thorns in their eyes. So the word Karaite which means, as I said, to stop abruptly or to stop short, as far as I know, is not related to the word kotz, which means a thorn. I suppose we could look it up. But they're relating it back to the Gemara in Masechet Soteh, but we're not going to trace that down right now. This is Hertz, and he's pretty darn good, I got to say. I always point out that this is the Chumash I grew up on when I was dragged against my will to a synagogue each Shabbat by my father. My mother was not really too much into the synagogue. She pretty much stayed at home, but my father would drag us kids to synagogue, and which was probably not the best idea because all we did was make trouble since we weren't very interested in the goings on. I only became really interested in Judaism at a not a much later age, but a later age in my 20s. So okay, let's see where we are. But let's look at Hertz. He's pretty good. So Exodus 1. This one's not so easy to navigate always. Well, let's see what we got here. Here we go. Exodus 1. We can go up a bit. Okay, 70 souls. So we'll go back a little bit. So Rabbi Dr. Hertz says Jacob himself is included in the number. I disagree with that. See Genesis 49, 8-27. Of the 70, 68 were males. If to these we add the wives of the sons and grandsons and the husbands of the daughters and granddaughters and all their servants and their families, the total number of those who entered Egypt must have been several hundred, if not thousands. Okay. And Joseph died. Okay, let's just go to where we are. A new king. So regarding the phrase a new king, so this is what Rabbi, I can't highlight here, unfortunately, unless I do something like this. 1 second here. Maybe that works. I don't even know if it works. No, I don't think it works. Try that. I don't know what you guys are seeing on the screen if I do that, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, a monarch of a new dynasty with a nationalist policy, probably Ramses II. Joseph served one of the Hyksos shepherd kings. So the Hyksos were these Canaanite invaders who came down and took over Egypt for, I think it was about 2 centuries or something like that. An Asiatic dynasty whose rule in Egypt began some centuries before him. See note on Genesis, blah, blah, blah. Their rule came to an end not long after the death of Joseph, when the Hyksos were driven back into Asia and the descendant of the native dynasty regained the throne. So he's talking about the Hyksos invasion, or the Hyksos pharaoh, or the Hyksos reign over Egypt. Again, that's kind of Egyptology, and there's so many different opinions. That just happens to be his opinion. Okay, so I don't think this is actually working. So who knew not Joseph, he feigned to know nothing of Joseph's merits. Rashi, the immemorial ingratitude of rulers and commonwealths is proverbial. Especially common is ingratitude to Israel, the people that has achieved so much of eternal worth but has rarely succeeded in winning gratitude. All right, let's skip ahead a little bit. I forgot I have to go up. The way it's set up is a bit strange. Join themselves. All right. Taskmasters. Let's just find exactly where we are. Pithom and Ramses. So a lot of information here, but we're not going to focus on all of it. Oops. Spread abroad. Okay, let's just leave it at that. All right, let's go on. Verse 13. وَيَعْوِذُ مِصْرَيِّم et bnei Israel b'farech. So the Egyptians afflicted or enslaved the children of Israel b'farech back-breaking work. Farech comes from the underlying root there, means to break into pieces. So in other words, with they're like quarrying, they're like doing back-breaking labor, breaking large things into small things. Here they translate as with rigor. ويمرروا حياتهم بعبودة قشة بحمر وبلبنين وبكل عبودة بصداء كل عبودتهم أشر عبدوا بهم بفارغ. And so they embittered their lives, and this is why we eat the bitter herbs, right? With the original Passover offering, you're supposed to eat the bitter herbs. And actually, is it with the beginning and the later Passover offerings? Let's see. I have a list here. 1 second. 1 second. Here's Journeys, Jethro, Tabernacle Materials, interesting commentators, scripts, numbers. Oh, maybe I have it somewhere else. Okay, so now let's move on. At any rate, that's why I eat the bitter herbs with the Passover offering. So embittered their lives with hard work, with basically concrete or mortar and bricks. Levanim is related to the word lavan, which means white. So what is in modern Hebrew a malben is a rectangle, which is related to the word livanim or livanim, which means bricks, because bricks were rectangular, and that is in return related to the word lavan, which means white. Why? Because the bricks were laid out in the sun to dry, right? They were mud bricks, they were laid out in the sun to dry, and they became basically whitewashed by the sunlight. So it's just to point out how different words in Hebrew are related. It's so indicative, or it's so it gives so much insight into the ancient culture and into the language, right? Whoever would have known that the modern word malben for triangle, the modern Hebrew word for malben, triangle, is actually related back to the word lavan, the ancient Hebrew or ancient Semitic word lavan, which means white. It's the same root as Lavan, the Aramaean, right? In other words, Yaakov's uncle, right, that he stayed with for 20 years. At any rate, so basically, they made him work in the fields with mortar and bricks and all kinds of other work. Okay, we're going to move ahead a little bit, so I don't want to get bogged down too much. Any questions, any comments so far? Anybody? Oops, let me get rid of this banner. No, if not, then we're going to move on. So, وَيُمِرْ مَلَخْ مِصْرَيْم لِمِيَلَدُوث الرِّئُوث. Hello?
Yeah, sorry, Melech, that was me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get my microphone on quick enough.
Yeah.
I was going to point something out. I don't know if you saw it in the comments, but this, going back a little bit, the 70 souls that came down, when you look at the way they're written out, they're not written out in the order of their birth again, which I always find fascinating. I know we talked about that when we talked about the tribes moving the temple,
Right.
but it's interesting to note that even here, that they're not listed in order of birth.
And you're talking about where specifically? In Genesis, when the list is made?
When they named the 70 souls and the sons, the sons aren't mentioned in order of birth.
You're talking about in what we saw earlier in Exodus 1.
No. Can you hold that? Just 1 second. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, it gives the sons of Leah, and then it gives one of the handmaids.
Okay, in Shemot 1, it says, these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Yaakov, each coming with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin,
Right.
Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And
Right.
so they're not in order of birth again. And I wonder why that is.
Well, they kind of are. They're not in order specifically of birth, but they are in a very discernible order, and that order is first the hold on one second. I'm just putting it on mute for 1 second. Okay,
The sons of Zilpah.
I'll be right back. I just have to take care of something very briefly.
Yep, sure.
The sons of Zilpah are mentioned there, but not the sons of Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure this.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. So to answer your question, Ben, it's not in the order of birth per se, but there is rhyme and reason to it. So first we have the children of Leah in order of birth: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Right, 6 children. Then we have the one child of Rachel who was not already down in Egypt. That's Benjamin. So we have the order of so we have the 2 wives. And then we have the concubines. Okay, first the concubines the sons of the concubines. First the sons of Zilpah, Dan and Naphtali, and then the sons of it's Bilhah first, and then Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. So there is a hierarchy here, right? The sons of the concubines are considered second tier. That's just the bottom line. Okay, it doesn't matter how much you want to try to reconcile it with modern Western thinking. The fact of the matter is there was a clear hierarchy here, and the sons of the concubines are considered second tier. We also see this in the way that the tribes are arranged around the tabernacle, which we'll get to later in the book of Exodus. Okay, we see that the primary positions are given to the sons of the wives, and the secondary positions are given to the sons of the concubines. That's just the way it is. So yes, it's not specifically in order, but it's not specifically in order of birth, but there is an order to it here. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Makes good sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so where were we? So we were in verse 15. And we have here. ויאמר מלך מצרים למיילדות העבריות אשר שם האחד שפרה ושם השנית פועה. So now we're going to have the first decree against the children, right? Against the Israelite children. And this is in direct response to the idea that Israel is growing too numerous, right? So first, Pharaoh decides to control the situation by turning them into laborers, into forced labor, into slaves, right? That's the first attempt, right? So, okay, we're not going to control their numbers yet, or maybe that is going to control their numbers because they'll be so busy they won't be able to, I guess, have time to raise or make large families. But then, that's the first decree. Now, the second decree is directly meant to affect the numbers, or to address this concern that Pharaoh and the Israelites have regarding Egypt. And the Egyptians have regarding Israel, that they're growing too large in number too quickly. They're just, it's like a cancer growing out of control in their eyes, right? So he goes to the midwives, Shifra and Pu'ah. Wayomer bialdchen et ha'ivriot ur'iten al ha'avanim im benhu wahamiten watawa'im bat hi wahaya. So basically, to make a long story short, he says to the midwives, if it's a son, kill it. Okay. Verse 17, wa tirena hamiladot et ha Elohim ולא עשו כאשר דיבר אליהם מלך מצרים ותחיינה את הילדים. So these midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them or had spoken to them, and they kept the children alive. ויקרא מלך מצרים למילדות ויאמר להם מדוע עשיתם הדבר הזה ותחיינו את הילדים. And so the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, calls him in for a little one-on-one, a little conference. Step into my office, please. I have something I need to talk to you about. And he asks him why they're not following orders. Verse 19, and they come up with an excuse. وَتُمَرْنَ هَمِيلَدَوت الْفَرَوْ كِلو كَنَشِيم هَمِسْرِيوت העבריות כי חיות הנה בטרם תבוא עליהם המילדת וילדו. So he basically says to them that these Israelite women, they're built differently. Something's a little bit different here, and we can't get to them in time. In other words, we're not there. But the Israelite women already give birth by the time we get there, so we're not able to kill the babies. Obviously, we know this is an outright lie. So the midwives are lying directly to Pharaoh. Ostensibly, also these are Egyptian midwives, right? So it does say la miladot ivriot to the Hebrew midwives, but that just might mean that midwives to the Hebrews. Oh, on the other hand, it might actually be Hebrew midwives. Unclear. Okay. Either way, they're keeping the babies alive and using an excuse, lying directly to Pharaoh and saying they can't get to them in time. But the real reason is it says that they feared God, and so they did not kill the babies. They kept the babies alive. Verse 20. Wa'itev Elohim la miladot wa yirev ha'am v'yamsu me'od. So, in response, God was good to the midwives, and they became 21. And so, as it was, or in response to as it was that the midwives feared God, so He made for them houses. And there are different comments on this. Some people say this means literal houses, built them houses, but I don't think that's the case. It would have said to them, it would have said something like "Yivne, why yivne lahem batim," and plus, who cares? What that's the reward for for keeping the children alive, that you get a nice apartment or something like that. It doesn't make sense. So most commentators will say that it means Go ahead, Ariella.
I'd be interested in what could be the real meaning there. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of commentaries on it, but I mean, it's like an enigma. It's like, did they become now part of the people of Israel? Is that what it's trying to say?
Or did they become a house like a family? A family can be a house.
Exactly.
Or were they given like you said, a nice apartment in Bat Yam? Or
Exactly. They won the lottery and got a free $1 million apartment in Bat Yam. So
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's speaking about basically building up their own houses. In other words, gave them large amounts of descendants. I think that's what it's speaking about. Also, it's not clear to me whether these. It says again, lamiladot ivriot. It says the Hebrew midwives, but it's not clear whether they were Hebrews or Egyptians. I would tend to think they were Egyptians, actually, based on just the flow or the context of the story, right? Because they seem to be agents of Pharaoh, right? They also seem to have Egyptian names, although that's certainly not, determinate, because by that time, a lot of the Israelites probably had Egyptian names. Moshe for sure did, although he was named directly by Pharaoh's daughter. We could look at some commentary on this and see what we get, but I have a feeling that these are Egyptian. These are Egyptian mialadot. These are Egyptian midwives that are serving the Hebrews, and that when it says that built them houses, that it's referring to gave them large families or gave them large amounts of descendants. And I will bring a proof verse for why I think that. And that is going to be, I have to think exactly where it's going to be. It's going to be in Genesis, approximately 35. No, it's going to be more than that. Let's see what 35 comes up. It's before this. It's before this. It's before this. It's before this. Let me look at it in the English just to make it go a bit more quickly. 1 second. I think it's one chapter before this. 1 second. Here it is. It's Genesis chapter 30, verse 30. Let's look at it in the Hebrew. So Yaakov is working for Lavan, and so Yaakov wants to be set free, right? And then so then Yaakov basically, Lavan basically convinces so basically at that point, Lavan is trying to convince Yaakov to stay, which he ends up staying for another 6 years. Okay. And then Yaakov responds, as Lavan is trying to sucker him into staying longer. Then Yaakov responds in Genesis chapter 30, verse 30, Ki me'at asher haya lecha lifanai wa yifrotz larov wa yivarech Yahweh otcha le'ragli ve'ata matai asegam anchi leveti. So he responds, because, so Jacob responds to Lavan in explaining why he doesn't want to stay any longer. It's already been 14 years, because you had very little before I came, or before me. And now you've succeeded greatly. Literally, you've bursted out to a great number. Okay, he's talking about Lavan's physical possessions, specifically flocks, right? And Yahweh has blessed you as a result of me, or in my wake. And now, when will I do something also for my house? Okay, so that's what Yaakov says. When am I going to do something for my house? And we see here that he's not talking physically about his physical house, his structure, right? He's not saying to Lavan, when am I going to go, build a house out of stone on the hilltop or something like that, right? Here he's saying, when am I going to do something? When am I going to do something for my household? And the verb here is se. When will I do, or matai segam anchi leveti? Literally, when will I do also me for my house or for my household, right? So we have the verb being asa, or to do, and we have the indirect object being for my house, and it's the same verb and the same. It's the same verb and the same noun here, right? Ya'as lahem batim, and he made for them houses, right? Here we have ya'as. Here we have asa. It's the same underlying verb, which is asa, ayin sin hey, which means to do. And so here we have, when will I do for my house, literally, but clearly from the context it means for my household. And here it says that God did or made them houses or households, right? So because it's the same verb and the same object, then I think that this kind of implies that it's the same idea going on here. This is kind of a proof verse where clearly this means Yaakov is saying, when am I going to build up my own household? And here it's saying that God built up their households, right? So I think that's kind of the implication here. Okay. And
yeah, I'd agree with that, Malik. And it's interesting. I'd never thought of them as being Egyptians before. And when you think that when they came out of Egypt, everybody lost or the Egyptians lost everything. Well, if their household was built up, then possibly they were the only two that didn't lose everything.
Exactly.
So that's a great point. Thank you.
Exactly, because if we were speaking about the Israelites, and their households were already being built up because they were being, they were already multiplying greatly, right? So I think I think it's like Rahav. Rahav was the prostitute that lived in the walls of the city of Jericho, and when Jericho was destroyed, then Joshua and the Israelites made a deal with Rahav that if she hides them and doesn't give away their presence, then when they come to destroy Jericho, they're going to save her and her household, and that's exactly what they did. It's the same idea here, right? These are like rebels from their own nation that are siding with the Israelites through fear of God. It says in the case of Rahav also, I believe, I'd have to check exactly, but if I remember correctly, it says she also feared God, and that's the reason that she helped the Israelites. And it's the same thing here. So I think that's what it's pointing out. We could try to get that, and the fact that Shifra and Puah are clearly not Egyptian. I'm sorry, not Israelite or Hebrew names. They're Egyptian names. Would also be evidence to me that we're speaking about Egyptian women who are serving the Israelites as how do you say in English, as midwives. Thank you. All right, but we could do a little bit of let's see what Ibn Ezra says. So this is Exodus 1:15. Let's see what he has to say. 1:15 in Miladot. Okay, so this is what he has to say. The midwives were in charge of all the other midwives, or these midwives were in charge of all the other midwives, for there can be no doubt that there were more than 500 midwives. These two midwives were in charge of all the other midwives and saw to it that they gave a tax to the king from the money they collected from the services. Okay, that's kind of irrelevant to what we're looking for. Whoever comes from families called Hebrew when it's children of Hebrew. Okay, skip that. And then we already skip ahead. Let's look at Robert Alter on that one. So again, that's Exodus 1:15. Exodus 1:15, the Hebrew midwives. So Hebrews is regularly the designation of Israelites from a foreign perspective. So Robert Alters seems to imply that they are Israelites. That's what he's saying here. Shifra and Puah, the first name suggests beauty. The second name, as the Ugaritic text indicate, might originally have been fragrant blossom, and hence girl. But since the root Pa'ah can also mean to murmur or to gurgle, Rashi inventively, keyword inventively, suggests it is the sound of a nurturing woman made to soothe an infant. That's ridiculous. In any case, the introduction of the just two heroic midwives reflects the way this entire narrative, in contrast to Genesis, has been stylized and simplified. Abraham ibn Ezra appears to grasp this principle of schematization when he proposes that Shifra and Puah, in fact, would have had to have been supervisors over the whole battalions of midwives. So, okay. Well, what we can get out of that is that Robert Alter thinks they were actually Israelites. Let's look at Rabbi Dr. Hertz and see what he has to say about it. So 15. Let's always a bit difficult to navigate this. 10, 11, 12, 13. I think I have to go down one. The pages are in a weird order. No, I skipped it. No, I have to go down one more to get to 15, I think. There we go. 15. 1, 2, Hebrew midwives. So Rabbi Dr. Hertz says they're Egyptian, i.e., I can't highlight it here because it's actually just a screenshot, but if you look here on the left where it says the number 15, Hebrew midwives, i.e. the Egyptian women who served as midwives to the Hebrews, Septuagint, Joseph, and Abarbanel. So he quotes 3, Josephus and Abarbanel. It is hardly probable that the king would have expected Hebrew women to slay the children of their own people. There you go. Okay, so we have differing opinions. So Robert Alter says they were actually Israelites, and Rabbi Dr. Hertz says that they were Egyptians, and he quotes the Septuagint, Josephus, and Abarbanel, and I think they're Egyptians. The Ibn Ezra doesn't say anything about it. Shifra and Puah, the names are probably Egyptian. That's what I think as well. There were 2 midwives in the capital where Hebrew women would seek the services of a midwife. I agree with that 100%. In the capital, furthermore, dwelt the better classes of the children of Israel, their natural leaders. If Pharaoh could only succeed in exterminating these, he would experience little difficulty in rendering the slave portion harmless. Okay, good. So there we go. So I agree with Dr. Rabbi Hertz, and in this case, disagree with Robert Alter. Okay. So where were we? Batim. So we can look up verse 21 too and see what they say about building them houses. So Robert Alter, let's see what he has, if anything, to say about that one. He made households for them, so we can already see by his translation that his understanding is not physical houses, but households. Although some have seen Pharaoh as the antecedent of he, God seems considerably more likely, obviously. The sense would be then that they were rewarded for their virtue with social standing, establishing their own families or something of the sort. Okay? Ibn Ezra, that's verse 21. And Ibn Ezra doesn't say anything about that specific issue. Let's see. Okay, so he goes off on another issue. So that's that. Okay. Oops. Okay, verse 22. Vayitzab Paro lechol amo lemor kol haben ha'ilod ha'yorah tashlihuhu lechol habat tehayun. Okay, so that's the third decree. Just 1 second here. So the first decree was to enslave the Israelites, hoping that would solve the problem of them growing in number and growing out of control. The second decree was going to the midwives and telling them to kill all the males and leave the females alive. And that didn't work. So now Pharaoh, as the third decree, enlists the entire nation of the entire Egyptian nation and tells them that if you see an Israelite son, an Israelite male child, then to throw him into the river, into the Nile River, ostensibly. Yor, as we will see when we get to the plagues, can mean just a river in general, but when you speak about a river, then you're speaking about the Nile River, right? Like, let's say if you live right near the Mississippi River in the United States, and you say, I'm going down to the river, or is the river flooded, or how's the river flowing today? We know exactly what river we're talking about, right? So that would be the implication here, right? The river is the only river. When you're talking about the river, is the Nile. It's like when I grew up in New York City and I say we're going into the city. Okay, it doesn't mean we're going to Chicago or Philadelphia. It means we're going into Manhattan, right? So same idea here. Which reminds me of a funny story. I was once traveling. Hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna get water. So here's a funny and 100% true story. I was once traveling with a friend of mine. We decided to take a day trip from New York City to Philadelphia. And so we drove down to Philadelphia. And we spent the day there, whatever we did, I don't remember, went to a museum, walked around, who knows what. And in the evening, it was wintertime, so sunset early. In the evening, it was dark, and it was time to drive back. So we drove back from Philadelphia to New York City. It's about a 2-hour drive. And we're driving, along the road. This is, I guess we had GPSs, but for some reason, I guess I wasn't using the GPS. So this is before the days of the GPS. And we drive for about 2 hours, and we see a city in the distance. And I say to my friend, I said, that's weird. That does not look like New York City. What's going on here? And so he said, oh, it's probably, we thought maybe it's Newark, New Jersey, or one of the other small cities that, are in the satellites of New York. And so we kept on driving. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, we see a sign, and it says, "Welcome to Philadelphia." And it was like this feeling of vertigo. So we had no idea what was going on, but somehow it was like out of some kind of I felt like I was in some kind of science fiction movie or in the Twilight Zone or something. I drove 2 hours from Philadelphia into New York, and I see a sign, "Welcome to Philadelphia." Well, okay. Once we got our bearings a little bit and we figured out what happened, is that we went basically. So New Jersey basically connects New York City and Philadelphia. We'd gone about halfway up into New Jersey, and then we were supposed to transfer roads, and we must have transferred to a different road. And when we transferred to the second road, instead of heading north back up to New York City, we must have gone the wrong way and gone back down south and ended up back in Philadelphia. So we drove 2 hours and ended up right back in Philadelphia. And I never forget seeing that sign, "Welcome to Philadelphia," after, leaving Philadelphia 2 hours ago and thinking we were back in New York City. It's very disorienting. At any rate, so I forgot how we got onto that. Yes, we were talking about going into the city and going back to the idea of having the children thrown into the river, which, even though Yaor means a river in general, it means in this case the Nile River. Okay, let's go on to chapter 2. And now we get to the protagonist of the book of Exodus. So if the protagonist, there were a number of protagonists in the book of Genesis, but we could say that the protagonist of the book of Genesis was probably Jacob, right? Because all of this is about the genesis of the nation of Israel. Israel is Jacob, right? And here, finally, we get to the protagonist of the book of Exodus, and that's Moshe. Okay? So who are the protagonists of the other books? Well, Deuteronomy, clearly the protagonist, I guess we could say again, is Moshe, because most of the book of Deuteronomy is Moshe's speeches before he dies. Who's the protagonist of the book of Leviticus? We could really say, I guess, the Levites and the Kohanim, right? It's all about them. It's all about most of it is about the sacrifices, the Kohanic practices, purity and impurity, things along those lines. And the book of Numbers, well, I guess that's kind of a mix. Okay, that's already out in the desert. Okay, so here we go. Now we are going to find out about Moses. So, by the way, in this parsha, we have to go to Exodus 6. So we have 5 chapters. That's a long parsha, and I'm trying to limit these talks to about 3 hours, which means we have about another hour. So probably what I'll do is at a certain point, well, I might just want to get to Exodus 3 for obvious reasons, because it speaks about the name of God. So I think what I'm going to do for Exodus 2 is I'm just going to read through it with minimal commentary, and I'll just throw in a couple comments here and there. And if anybody wants to add any comments, please do. Okay? But I'm just going to read through this chapter kind of quickly. Okay? וילך איש מבית לוי, ויקח את בת לוי. Okay, so we see that Levites, they intramarried within the same tribe. Okay. ותהר האישה, ותלד בן ותראה אותו כי טוב הוא, ותיס בניהו שלושה ירחים. So they saw he was good. I mean, what mother doesn't see her child as good, right? So what does that mean? We could sit here and speak about that for a while, but again, I want to go through quickly, right? Maybe they saw something special in this child. Maybe they realized that this child has some kind of certain specific role within the history of Israel. I think that's kind of what it's referring to. And they hid him for 3 months, literally for 3 moons. Yareach is the moon. There are 2 words for month. One is Yerach, and the other one is Chodesh, which really just means a new moon. So 3 new moons would be 3 Chodeshim. In this case, it just means 3 moons. Same idea, just a different word. Okay, velo yochla od haspino wat kahlo devat gome wat tahmira bahimar bazofeth wat tasim ba it hayeled wat tasim basuf al sifat hayor. So they couldn't hide him anymore. He's 3 months old. He's growing too big. The gig is up. So they made for him a teva, literally an ark. It's usually translated as a basket, but this is the exact same word that is used for Noah's Ark, and there's a lot of similarities here. Okay, so let's just look very, very, very briefly. If we go to Genesis chapter 5. No, sorry, chapter 6. So here's the account of Noah building the ark, and let me just find exactly what I'm looking for. So one second. Right. So here in Genesis chapter 6, verse 14, God says to Noah, make yourself a teva, an ark, tevat atse gopher. Make yourself an ark made out of gopher wood. Okay. Or stalks of gopher wood. Okay. And you shall cover it with, they usually translate this as a pitch, but it literally means a covering. Okay, so here he's to make an ark out of gopher wood and cover it with some kind of tar or pitch. The word is kofer. Okay, here we have Moses' mother. Okay, she made an ark out of gomeh. Okay, so there it was atse gopher. Gopher wood, and here it's gomeh, which is usually translated as bulrushes or something like that. Let's see how Robert Alter translates it. So this is Exodus 2:3. Wicker. So he translates it as wicker, which again is the same idea. Okay, so here it's gopher. It's actually stalks of gopher wood. And here it is wicker or bulrushes or straw or something like that. With tahmira, okay, so homer means basically the chemar. So then you shall plug it up with chemar is basically concrete, or it's basically mud is what it is. Zafet is tar, okay? And here we have you're going to cover it with, and they usually translate this as pitch, but it really just means some kind of covering. Here they translate it as pitch. The underlying idea is that there are a lot of similarities between this ark and this ark. Okay, first of all, they're both called a teva. Okay, if I remember correctly, I don't think this word teva is used anywhere else in the entire Tanakh besides these 2 instances. I will check though, just to verify that. So that's all Noah stuff. 28 occurrences. So all of this is Noah. So up to here, we're speaking only about Noah's Ark. Genesis 8, that's all Noah's Ark. And then, so Genesis 9. Okay, so this is all with Noah from this and above. And now we have Exodus 2. Okay, and that's it. And that's mentioned now twice, the Teva. Exodus 2:3 and Exodus 2:5. So this is the only time, and this is the concordance for the entire Tanakh. So these are the only 2 times in the entire Tanakh that the word teva, usually translated as an ark or a basket, or in the case of Noah, it's usually translated as an ark. In the case of Moshe, it's translated as a basket. These are the only 2 times that the only 2 stories in which this word teva is used. Okay, again, pointing out kind of a clear or an implication, some kind of connection. And this is not my idea alone. This is a number of commentaries will point this out. Okay, a connection between the ark or the basket that is made for Moses by his mother and the ark that is made for Noah, or that is commanded by God to be made, that Noah makes for himself, right? Another similarity is we have the specific materials that are used, and we're also told that it's the type of wood that's used, and that it should be plugged together with a certain type of material. In this case, it's a pitch, which really just means here kofer. It just means a covering, and in this case, it's mud and tar. Okay, but we're getting specifics on exactly how the ark is built in each case. Okay, and then we know that there obviously it's in both cases it's an ark, so it's placed in water. I mean that's not such a big coincidence, but we know that in each case, right, that these arks are basically used to save whoever they're holding from certain destruction. So in the case of the Israelites, all of the males are supposed to be thrown into the river. Moses is saved by being in an ark. In the case of Noah, everyone dies. Noah is saved by surviving inside an ark. Okay, so just want to point that out. Let's go on. Verse 5. وَتَرِدْ بَتْ پَرْعُ لِلْحُطْسِ الْهَيَّئُرْ وَنَعْرُتَهَا وَرْخُطْ الْيَدْ هَيَّئُرْ وَتَرْئِ إِتْ دِوَان بِثُخ هَسُوف وَتِشْلَخ إِتْ أَمَطَا وَتِكَحِهَا. Okay. So Pharaoh's daughter comes down and sends her maidservants to take the ark. Verse 6. What? So first of all, she opened it up, which implies that it had a covering on it. Okay. وَتِرْئِهُ it had yeled wahine na'ar bokhe وتحمل allow وتمر ميالده ha'ivriim ze. So she saw the child. Wahine na'ar. So here's something interesting, just very briefly. We have different words for children. We'll see sometimes the word taf, which means like babies. We see yeled, which is usually translated as a child. Na'ar, which is translated as usually as a youth. Am I forgetting any other ones? I can't remember. There are a couple of other ones, but the point is that here, this word, which is usually translated as child, and na'ar, which is usually translated as youth, meaning like, let's say, a teenager or something like that. In modern Hebrew, na'ar means specifically a teenager. Okay, you won't call a little boy a na'ar. You call him a yeled, and if you use the word na'ar, you're speaking pretty much always about a youth or a teenager. Okay, but here we see these words are all referring to little baby Moses, so they're kind of interchangeable in biblical Hebrew. Yeled doesn't necessarily always mean child. In this case, it means a little baby. Na'ar, even though sometimes usually it means a youth or young person. In this case, verse 7. What tomer ahto el bat par'o ha'elech we karati lach ishak meneket min ha'ivriot wa'tenik lach et ha'yaled. So there is Miriam, Moses' sister, who always seems to be very loyal to him, except for that one incident where she speaks out against him, she and Aaron, and Miriam becomes leprous. So Miriam is now also acting smart. It almost reminds me of like some of these stories in the Holocaust, how the Jews were able to survive and sometimes trick the Nazis and the guards into doing things that they wanted them to do, right? There are all kinds of little stories like that. So here, Moses' sister goes and calls Moses' own mother. Verse 8, what tomer la ibat per'o lechi what telech alma. So here's another word, alma. This is a very loaded one. This is the word that is used for the virgin birth. It's the same word, usually in that case translated as virgin, right? Incorrectly translated as virgin, but it just means young lady. Okay, the word for virgin is a bitula. So we see here that same word being used, speaking about Miriam, speaking about Moses' sister. Watikra et im ha yaled. And she goes and calls Moses' mother. Wat tomer la bat paro elichi et hayeled hazeh wahenikehu. I'm sorry. Henikhu li wa'ani eten et sikharech watika ha'isha hayeled wa ha'isha hayeled wa tanikehu. So then, not only is, so check this out for a nice Jewish mind at work, right? Not only is Miriam's now taking Moses, he's not yet named Moses, but taking the child to his own mother, but now he's going to get paid for it by the daughter of Pharaoh. So Moses' mother is actually going to make a salary to or make money by raising her own child or by suckling her own child. Verse 10. وَيْدَالْ هَيَلِدْ وَتَبِئِهُ لَذَاتْ پَرْعُ وَيَهِي لَا لَبِنْ وَتِكْرَى شِمُو مُشَّةِ وَتُمَرْ كِي مِنْ هَمَايَ مِشِفِهُ. Okay, so when the boy grew up, we're not sure exactly how old. We have no idea. Okay, at any rate, at a certain point, ostensibly when she was done, when he was weaned, right? So still he was pretty much a baby, but he was now weaned. That would be my guess from the context, right? She took him to Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh's daughter raises him as a son, like a son, and gives him the name Moshe, saying, Mina mai mishitihu, from the water I've pulled him out. There's a lot of talk about this underlying root, masha, to pull out or to draw out. Many commentators say it's actually an Egyptian word, not a Hebrew word. There's endless commentary on that, but we're not going to go into it right now. Verse 11. So now Moshe's now grown up. Okay. So Waihi, whenever you see the word Waihi, or often when you see Waihi, it means there's a pause in time. Okay, it's almost like saying, and then such and such happened, or once upon a time. It's almost like starting a new chapter. Okay, so Waihi, literally Waihi biyamim hahem. So Waihi, and so it was. Okay, in those days. So now we're done with the Moses as a baby starter, as a baby story, and now we're on to Moses already ostensibly as a young adult. Right. So Waihi biyamim hahem, Waidal Moshe. ويتسأل إحاو ويار بالسيفرطان ويار إيش مصري مكا إيش عبري من إحاو ويفن كو وخو ويار كي إن إيش وياخ إت همصري ويتمنيه بخول. So Moses sees an Egyptian man. What do you want, Paul?
When do you think this will end? Because
in about an hour.
To come to this house, like, will you come?
No problem. All right. So Moses sees an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man, and Moses looks around. There's nobody there. Kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. Okay. So this is really the first thing we know about Moshe the man, right? So Moshe the man, if you want to be cynical, you could say he's a violent killer, but of course that's not the case. These are what atheists would probably like to point out. He's a man of justice. He's a man who cares about the oppressed, and specifically about the oppressed of his own people, right? It's clear that he knows that he's a Hebrew, right? We'll see that explicitly, okay, afterwards, because he speaks about the Hebrews as his brothers, right? He is not the type of person who sits on the sidelines. He saw an injustice and he acted, right? And that's a specific type of person, right? I like to think I've tended to be in my life that same type of person. No, I've not killed anybody, although there are a couple of people I would have liked to. But a type of person who, if they see an injustice, does not sit on the side. And this is really the defining quality of Moshe, right? We see that if he sees there's something wrong, then something in his heart stirs, and even if it puts him at personal risk, as it will now, there's something in his heart that just makes him do it, right? This is kind of the case of just about all of the prophets in the Tanakh. That's why prophecy is often called a burden. Okay, the burden of I don't know, pick your favorite prophet of Jeremiah, or the burden of Isaiah, right? They have this thing in their heart. They know that by saying it, they're going to get in trouble. They're going to be going against the regime. They're going to be going against the society, and they could get themselves into a lot of personal trouble, which many of them did. But there's something in their heart that stirs, and they know they just have to do it, right? It's the same idea here. Moses knows that if he gets caught doing this, which he does, then he's going to be in trouble, right? That's why he looked around to make sure no one was there. But something in his heart said, I just can't stand by and let this Egyptian man beat my own brother. And he steps into action. And this we already see is a characteristic of Moshe. And it's not for no reason that he was chosen as the leader of Israel. He was chosen as the leader of Israel because he had a deep sense of right and wrong. He had a deep sense of justice, and he was also a very humble person, and a person who truly seemed to care about his fellow brothers and sisters, his fellow Israelites. And we see on a number of occasions he even fought against God to prevent God from destroying them, right? Okay, verse 14. Wayomer mi samcha laish sar wa shofet alenu lehargeni ata omer kasher. I'm sorry, I skipped a verse. Verse 13. Wayetze beyom hasheni wahine shene anoshim ivriim nisim wayomer la rosha lama take reecha. So the next day he sees two Hebrews fighting with each other, and he says to the one that was in the wrong, "Why are you beating why are you fighting with your fellow man, your fellow Israelite?" Okay, verse 14. Wayomer mi. So the one ostensibly the one who's in the wrong, and we're talking about now an Israelite saying this to Moshe, right? Wayomer mi samcha laish sar wa shofet alenu. And he said, who has placed you as a prince and as a judge over us? Do you plan to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? And Moshe feared, and he said, and he realized that what he'd done yesterday, killing the Egyptian, was known, right? It had gotten out, right? The rumor, the word was out. Okay. Now, something very interesting here. There is foreshadowing. There's clear foreshadowing here in verse 14, right? So the Israelite who was in the wrong, the Hebrew who was in the wrong, says to Moshe, Misamcha, who placed you as a prince and as a judge over us? This is clear foreshadowing, right? Who placed Moshe as a prince and a judge over Israel? Isn't that is going to be his future role? He is going to be the prince and the judge over Israel. He's going to be explicitly, he's never called really a prince, but he's called the judge, right? He's going to be the leader and the judge over Israel. And this is clear foreshadowing, right? Of it's irony, right? Who placed you as a judge over us? Well, God is going to later place Moshe as the judge over Israel. And so this is foreshadowing. It reminds me of a scene in the movie The Matrix, which is one of my favorite movies of all times, and one of many people's favorite movies of all times, where, let's see if I can get the lines correctly. Neo is sitting in the office with his boss, and the boss is calling him Mr. Anderson, and he's saying, Mr. Anderson, you think that you are special. You think that the rules do not apply to you. You think, I can't remember exactly the words, but something along those lines, right? And that was clear foreshadowing, right? Because Neo in the movie was special. Neo is an anagram of one, right? He was the one, right? He was special. He didn't have to follow the rules. He was able to dodge bullets. Once he learned how to bend the rules, he was able to bend the rules and even dodge bullets, right? It's clear foreshadowing in this case, right? It's the same idea here. It's even possible. I mean, these brothers who are now sisters or whatever, who wrote the Matrix clearly were use the Bible as the base, right? That's why the female interest the female lead Trinity, right? Trinity, three, like the Christian Trinity. Neo is an anagram. If you change the letters of Neo around, you get one. There's a lot of biblical references in the story, and so who knows? It's even possible they're referring or they're thinking back to this. But this is clear foreshadowing. Who placed you, Moshe, as prince and a judge over us? How ironic. He is going to be placed as the prince and the judge over Israel in the near future, well, in the distant future. And so Moshe realizes the gig is up, and it's time to get out of Dodge. And get out of Dodge he does. Verse 15, Wayishma Paro et hadavar hazeh, Wayivakesh laharor et Moshe, Wayivrach Moshe mitnei Paro, Wayeshev be'eretz Midian, Wayeshev al habe'er. So now Moses runs to Midian, and now we have another well scene. Okay, very reminiscent of Rivka with Abraham's servant, and very reminiscent of Yaakov when he rolls the rock off the well when he sees Rachel. Right. So this is a theme that is repeating itself. There's so many themes. There's the Torah. One of the things that is amazing about the Torah, about the Tanakh, is very self-referential. Stories are constantly referring to each other. Okay, you can make a claim that proves it's not true, it's contrived, or you can make a claim that these are just themes that happen to repeat themselves, right? Perhaps divinely inspired, okay, or divinely ordained. Verse 16: "U'lekohen Midian sheva banot wa tavona wa tidlena wa timalena et ha'atim lahashkot son avihem. So here we have again, Moshe is standing up for what's right. Okay, so this Kohen of Midian, the priest of Midian, who turns out to be his future father-in-law Jethro, or Reuel, or Hobab, he has three different names in the Torah, or Yeter, four different names. Well, Yeter and Yitro are basically the same thing. So and so he sees that he's in a foreign land, right? And he's fleeing for his life, right? So the last thing he wants to do is get in trouble in some foreign land. Okay? He doesn't need more trouble. He's fleeing for his life, but yet he sticks up when he sees these shepherds come by and chase away the seven daughters of this priest of Midian. Moshe again sticks up. So this is the second major incident we see about him, right? Is again, he's sticking up for what's right. This is the defining quality of Moshe, as it is the defining quality of a lot of the patriarchs. Just when Abraham in Genesis chapter 11 stood up for Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, he lost in the end because Sodom and Gomorrah was so wicked that they couldn't even find 10 righteous people in the city. But the point is, he stood up. Moshe stands up, as mentioned a number of times. When God wants to destroy Israel, Moshe stands up and prevents God from doing that, right? Even saying, erase me from this book. If you're going to destroy Israel, then erase me from this book. Even when he's offered that a new nation will be made out of him, he still refuses, right? So we see the characteristics of Moshe. It's not true that we don't see what kind of person this is. From a very early age, he's someone who has a very strong sense of right and wrong and is not afraid to stick up for those who are weaker against those who are stronger, even when it puts his own safety at risk or his own life at risk. And that is the characteristic of what a true leader is, right? What someone who's supposed to be a true leader, right? Not like a Joe Biden, the Manchurian candidate, the fake quote-unquote president of the United States. More like a Donald Trump, who really put his own fortune and his reputation and even his life at risk because he believed in saving his country. Okay, in the end, he kind of fell short, sadly, but he just got beaten down so much by his enemies that he just kind of he was like in a kind of a haze or a fog. Unfortunate, but his intentions were definitely in the right place. Verse 20, Wayomer el binotau wa'ayu lama zeh azavten et ha'ish. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped another verse. Verse 18. Watavona el Reuel. So here's the first time we are introduced by name to the father-in-law. He's now called Reuel. Avihen, why yomer madua miharatem bo hayom? How'd you get back home so early? verse 19, وَتَمَارْ نَائِشْ مِصْرِي هِسِّلَانُ مِيَاد هَا رَئِيم وَغَامَ دَلَو دَلَا لَانُ وَيَشْكْ إِت حَسْئُن.
So,
Yes, go ahead.
Malik,
Yes.
sorry, just interrupt.
Please.
Why does Yitro have 3 different names then? Any
It's a good
ideas on that?
It's a good question. So I could tell you what the atheists like to say. So the atheists,
yeah, it's the wrong.
give you what you're gonna, if you look it up, what the answer you're gonna get, which of course, as believing Israelites, we obviously are gonna reject this answer. But the usual answer you're gonna get is that they're from different sources, right? You're familiar with the documentary hypothesis.
Oh yeah, right.
Source, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's if you look it up, that's the answer you're gonna get. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the answer is that he's the priest of Midian. He's a very important he's a very important person, and very important people tend to have more than one name. So that would be my answer. That would be my answer.
Well, I've thought about that as well, actually, because if you think of somebody like Jonathan Sacks, when he grew up, he was Mr. Sacks.
Right.
Then he became Rabbi Sacks.
Mm-hmm.
Then he became Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks.
Right.
So in 1,000 years' time, they're going to say, who was this Lord Rabbi Sacks? He wasn't Jonathan Sacks.
Exactly.
You know, and it's possibly the same kind of conundrum there.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. He was obviously a very, very high up in Midianite society and very well respected. And well-respected people tend to have multiple names, right?
Yeah.
All of the patriarchs.
I'm glad we're on the same.
I mean, Yaakov has multiple names, right? Yaakov and Yisrael.
Yeah.
Avram and Avraham,
right.
Sarai and Sarah. Even though the only one that retains the 2 names at once is Yaakov. The others have their names changed, and the old names are never referred to again. But yeah, that's my understanding of it. That's the way I see it.
Cool. Yeah, we're on the same page on that then. Good.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Great. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Verse 20. ויאמר אל בנותיו ראו למה זה עזבתן את האיש קראנה לו ויאכל לחם. So they invite him in to eat. This man, this good Samaritan, who helped him out. Verse 21. ויאמר אל משה לשבת את האיש ויתן את ציפורה ביתו למשה. So Moshe decided it was good for him to stay with this man, and he married his daughter Tzipora. ותלד בן ויקרא את שמו גרשום כי אמר גר הייתי בארץ נוכריה. And so he gives birth to his first son, Gershom. So we know that Moshe has 2 sons, Gershom and Shamgar, and this is his first son, Gershom, who not really have a very significant role. None of Moshe's descendants have a very significant role in the Tanakh at all. In fact, I really can't think of anyone aside from his direct descendants who's really ever mentioned again in the entire Tanakh. But at any rate, so he names his first son Gershom because he says, Ger hayiti be'eretz nochriya. I was a stranger in a strange land, basically, to paraphrase. Okay, the theme of ger, of being a stranger or a sojourner, is, I don't even have to tell you, it's a major theme throughout the Torah, and especially in the book of Exodus, right? When Jacob goes down to Egypt, he also uses the word ger, right? I'm a sojourner. Number of the patriarchs use this word ger. It means like to be a sojourner or to temporarily live in a place. It implies a state of not being at rest at home, but of wandering, which is or being far away from home and ultimately yearning to go back home, right? And that's exactly the implication we have here. Verse 23. Wahi be'amim ha-rabim ha-hem wa-yamoth melech Misraim wa-ye'onhu b'nei Yisrael min ha-avodah wa-yizqu wa-ta'al shawatham el ha-Elohim min ha-avodah. So that king dies, that Pharaoh who was after Moses' life dies, and now finally God steps into the picture, and now begins the the next part of the Exodus story. Why Yishma Elohim et na'aktham? Why Yiskor Elohim et Britho et Avraham? Why et Ishaq? Why et Yaakov? So God remembers his promises to the patriarchs. So did God forget? I mean, what is this? He suddenly remembers? No, it's not what that means. It means there's a time and a place. It's now time for God to act on the promises that he made to the patriarchs, right? There's a time and a place for everything. Just like Joseph, when he was in Egypt, he could have sent messengers to his father saying, I'm alive. Why didn't he? There's a time and a place for everything. Every story has to unfold at its own pace, not any short, not any quicker, and not any slower. And so now is the time for God to remember the promises he made to the patriarchs and act on them. And that's the implication here. Not that he forgot or something like that. He was just waiting for the right time to strike. Okay, and now's the time. وَيَعْرِ Elohim et b'nei Yisrael وَيِدَعْ Elohim. So God saw the children of Israel, recognized the children of Israel, and God knew, right? Daddy knows best. And now it's time for Daddy to get into the action. All right. And you better watch out, because when Daddy comes to the schoolyard to take care of the bully who's beating up his son, you better run for the hills, boy. And that's what's going to happen here. Okay. وموشى حيا رأى إت سون يثرو نو كهن مديان وينحر إت هسون حرها مدبار ويبو إت حرها إلهيم هريبا. So Moshe was, so now we're in Exodus 3. Moshe was flocking, it was shepherding the sheep of Yitro. So here's the second name. First we saw him as Reuel. Now here he is, Now here he is as Yitro, so that's his second name. And Moshe goes out into the desert and he comes to the mountain of God. So here he is. So we know that so we can kind of get an idea, if we know where Midian is, which it's still not 100% clear, but most believe it's in the Arabian Peninsula. Then Hara Elohim, this is going to be the same mountain. This is going to be Mount Sinai. Okay. And we know this because it's going to be told to us explicitly that when the Israelites come out of Egypt, they're going to, you'll see in the next verse. Okay. Hara Elohim Horeva, right? So here we are in Horev. Okay. Horeva is a form of Hebrew. So the name of the mountain is, or the name of the area is Horev, and Horeva means movement towards. I forgot exactly what the grammatical term is, but when you say when you put a hey at the end of a name or a noun, it means movement towards. So I had a friend he used to like to talk in Hebrew, even though this was back in New York, and he would go into Manhattan, and he lived in Queens. And he would say to me that he's going to go to Manhattan and he's going to return to Queens. And he would say, "Ani chozer Queenza." I'm returning towards Queens. Queenza. Okay, so when you put a hey at the end, it means movement towards. Okay, so he came to the mountain of God, to Horev, Horeva. Okay, it's even in modern Hebrew. If you put a hey at the end of a noun, it means movement towards. Okay, verse 2. ויראה מלאך יהוה אליו בלבת אש מתוך הסנה וירא והנה הסנה בוער באש והסנה איננו אוכל. So first of all, this is the burning bush. Okay, so we see that it's not God appearing directly, it's a malach Yahweh, it's an angel of God. We see also that the Hebrew word for bush is sneh. We see that the mountain is later called Sinai, and many commentators have pointed out, and I think correctly so, that the word Sinai comes from the word sneh, so it means the mountain of the bush, or the mountain of the burning bush, or the mountain where the burning bush occurred, right? So this is the first time in his entire life that Moshe is introduced to something supernatural, right? This is first contact with the supernatural. Alrighty. Verse 3. ויאמר משה אסורה נא ואראה את המראה הגדול הזה מדוע לא יבער הסנה. So Moshe says, what the heck is going on here? The bush is burning, but it's not being consumed. Let me go over here and check it out. וירא יהוה כי שר לראות ויקרא אליו אלוהים מתוך הסנה. ויאמר משה ויאמר הנני. So now we see God sees that Moshe's come aside, and and God calls to him from within the bush, right? But we just saw that it was an angel of God that appeared to him in the flames of the fire, right? So what's going on here? It says an angel of God. Here it says God, and this is something that credit where credit is due. Hakham Yaakov ben Israel, who currently lives in Munich, Germany, always pointed this out to me, and I think he's 100% right, that basically when God interacts with human beings, except later on in the case of Moshe, where it says Moshe was the only prophet or the only person that spoke to God face to face, as a person speaks to his own friend, that usually interaction, when it says God spoke to such and such, it's being done through an angel. God does not speak directly to people. He speaks through an angel, but sometimes it will say God said such and such to a person, but really it's an angel saying it. God is speaking to the person through an angel, but stylistically in the Torah, it may say God said this and God appeared and God, etc., but it's not, it's an angel. So the two are used interchangeably, God and the angel of God. And that is what I believe is going on here. Verse 5, وَأَيُّمَرْ الْتِكْرَاv halom shalna عَلَيْخَ مِعَال رَيْلَخَ كِي هَا مَقَوْمَ شَرْ أَتَّا عُمِيد أَلَاوْ أَدْمَا قَدِشْهُ. So take your shoes off, don't come any closer. So yeah, you've all seen this in the Prince of Egypt, right? I don't have to go into it anymore. That's a joke. وَيُمَرْ أَنُخِي إِلُهِي عَلِيخَ إِلُهِي أَبْرَهَام إِلُهِي يِسْحَاق وَإِلُهِي يَعْقُوب وَيَسْتَرْ مُشِّ بَنَاوْ كِي يَرْئِ مِحَبِّيت إِلْهَا إِلُهِيم. Okay, so God identifies himself, or the angel identifies himself on behalf of God, right? I'm the God of Abraham. I'm the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moshe is like, what the heck is going on here? Verse 7. وَيُمَرْ يَحْوَهِ رَأِيتِ أَنْ عَنِي عَمِي شَرْ بَمِصْرَيْم وَإِتْ سَعَقْضَامْ شَمَعْتِ مِبْنِي نُغْشَوْ كِي يَدَّاتِ أَنْ مَخُوَاو. Okay, so God says, I know, I see their pain, I hear their screaming, right? So now it is time. God is now ready to act. Okay, after a promise 400 years ago, and we've spoken about this 400 years, even though it says that Israel will be down in Egypt for 400 years, the numbers just don't work out. And the later time it says 430 years, and then it says 200 years, right? So the 400-year count is, in my opinion, starts in Genesis 15 in the Brit Ben Abitarim, in the covenant of the pieces, when God speaks to Abraham. That's when the 400-year count starts. Okay. So, and now it's time for Daddy to get involved. وَإِرِدْ لَحَأْسِلُو مِيَاد مِصْرَيْم لَهَالُوتو مِنَا أَرْضٍ هِي إِلْ إِرِتْ طُبَا وَرِحَبَا إِلْ إِرِتْ مزوفات حلاف ودفاش إِلْ مقومة كِنْعَانِي هَيْتِيا إِمُرِيها بريزي هَيُوي وَهَيُبُسي. So, وَإِرِدْ لَحَأْسِلُو مِيَاد مِصْرَيْم. So I've come down to save him, or to take him save him from the hands of Egypt, Mitzrayim. Okay, is God speaking to Moshe. Take him, meaning the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, and to bring them up out of that land, El Eretz Tova Rechava, to a land that is good and wide. And this is another reason. So here we have the land of Israel is being called a land that is good and wide. Egypt is being called, as we saw, Misraim. So therefore, a lot of commentators will say that Mitzrayim, the underlying root is Sar, which means narrow. Here, so Egypt is being called the land of narrowness, and Israel is being called a land that is good and wide, right? So that's why, which does not seem to be the case. I'm just pointing out what you'll hear from many rabbis. That's why Mitzrayim is often understood as the narrow straits, or the land of constriction, and Israel is considered a land that is good and wide. Rechava means wide. Okay. In modern Hebrew, a street is a rechov, because it originally meant like a plaza, or a wide space. Okay, like a main concourse. So I don't think that's the case. We saw when we looked it up in Wikipedia that the underlying root for Mitzrayim is borderland or frontier land, not tsar, not meaning narrow, as opposed to rechava, meaning wide. But this verse here is usually why the rabbis will give that kind of common commentary on the meaning or the supposed etymology of the word Mitzrayim, even though I don't think it applies here. It could be a play on words. The Torah does a lot of play on words. El Eretz Zavat Halav Udvash, to a land flowing with milk and honey, and to the place of, and then mentions a bunch of the nations, right? How many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nations this time. Okay. Wa'ata, verse 9. Hine sa'akat minei Yisrael ba'a elai v'gam ra'iti et halahat asher Misraim l'chatzim otam. So there's all this phrase of God sees and God knows and God hears the screams and God hears the moaning and sees the pain of the nation of Israel, right? Again, by a lot of atheists or just, I guess, people who don't want to think too deeply about this. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean? It almost, right? It's almost a cause for the atheists and the academicians to say that this is just a fake story, right? Because what God didn't see before, God sees everything. God is God, right? But that's not what it means, right? God is now decided this is the time. Okay, He's been waiting for this moment, and now it's the time to act, right? It's like, I don't know, what would be an example? If our cat sees a frog or something like that, okay, the frog hops along. Obviously, the cat is already thinking, I want to get this frog, but he sits and waits, right? He lies in wait for the right time, right? Staying real quiet, waiting for exactly the right time, and when the right time comes, pounce in a split second. It's all over. It's the same thing here. It's not that God doesn't know or God doesn't see, right? It's that God has now decided this is the time to pounce. This is the time to act. And this is the time that God has decided to turn His attention towards the issue, because everything is coming together. The Amorites have fulfilled their sin. They've been a sinning nation for hundreds and hundreds of years. Time to get rid of them in another 40 years or so. The Egyptians the Israelites have overstayed their time in Egypt. The Egyptians have become evil towards the Israelites. The Pharaoh that, like Yosef, has now died. The promise to the patriarchs is now ready to be fulfilled. It's everything coming together at once, which is the way things often, if not always, happen. Okay, so it's the convergence, it's the confluence of a lot of things. Alrighty. وَأَعْطَى لِخَا وَإِشْ لَا حَا إِلْ بَلْعُونَ وَأَوْسَئِ عَمِي بَنَي إِسْرَائِيل مِنْ مِصْرَيْم. So now God says He's going to send Moshe. Again, I'm trying to go through this chapter a bit quickly because we have a lot more to go. So I'm not going to translate word for word all the time. وَيَوْمَرْ مُشَّ إِلْ هَإِلُهِيم مِي أَنُخِي إِلَيْخ إِلْ بَرْعُو وَخِي أُسِئَتْ بَنَي إِسْرَائِيل مِنْ مِصْرَيْم. Who am I? What did you choose me for? I'm a nothing. I'm just some dude who fled Egypt, right? Ironically, of course, we know he grew up as the son of the daughter of Pharaoh, basically Pharaoh's grandson, right? وَيَوْمَرْ كِي أَحْيَ مَخْ وَزَيْ لِخَا خَاءُثْ كِي أَنُخِي شَلَخْتِخَ بِهُتْزِيَخَا إِتْ هَعَمْ مِصْرَيْم تَعَبْدُونَ إِتْ إِلُهِيم أَلْ هَهَارْ هَزَّهْ. So this is how we know that this is Mount Sinai, right? Because it says this is going to be the sign. When the children of Israel come out of Egypt, they're going to worship me on this mountain. So we know that that's exactly where Moshe is at this time. And so that also leads to the idea that the mountain is called Sinai, because it's related to the word sneh, because sneh means bush, and this is where he sees the burning bush. Okay? Verse 13, وَيَوْمَرْ مُشَّ إِلَى إِلُهِيم هَإِلُهِيم هِنَ أَنُخِي بَا إِلْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل وَأَمَرْتَ لَهِمْ إِلُهِي أَبُوتِيكُمْ شِلَحَنِي إِلَيْكُمْ وَأَمْرُوا لِي مَا شِمُوا مَا أُمَرْ إِلَيْهِمْ. So now we get into the name of God, which, as you all know, is a huge topic, especially in Karaism. I've since rejected Yahuwah as the name and come to believe that it's Yahweh. And I will post in a second links to the video series that convinced me in the end It happens to be a video series by a Messianic Jew, but as you all know, I'm not Messianic or Christian in any way, shape, or form. Never have, never will be, unless I get hit in the head by a boulder or something like that. Then who knows? I may end up, worshiping these headphones as my God, which would probably be better than worshiping Jesus. At any rate, it's irrelevant because this series done by this Messianic Jew, he's a young man. I must say he is a true biblical scholar, and he does not, except in minor occasions, he does not rely on Christianity or on the New Testament at all. He speaks only about the Old Testament, and he's relying only on Hebrew grammar and on the Hebrew texts. And there's a certain Karaite out there, running around saying that the name is Yehovah or Yehovah. And quite frankly, this guy just shows how dishonest that Karaite's scholarship, or just shoddy, and at best shoddy, and at worst dishonest, that Karaite scholarship is. So if I can find that, let me do that. And I will post a link to the series right now. It's very detailed. It's very long. It's about the whole thing is approximately, I think it's about 15 different videos, and each video is anywhere from 1 to 2 hours long. So we're talking about a huge amount of very, very detailed, very, I guess you could say advanced or scholarly material. But if you have the time and the wherewithal, it's definitely worth watching it. Let me just see if I can find it here. Second, this is the guy. Playlists. Yeah, this is really. Yeah, this is it right here. Full playlist. And let me see if I can get a link to the playlist. Shuffle, link, share, copy, and I will post it right here. So check out that playlist, is all I can say. It is very long, very detailed, very advanced, but worth it. Even if you listen to it and you understand, let's say, 10% of it, you're still going to get a lot out of it if you have the time. Okay, so that being said, we are back here in Moshe. So now Moshe asks, what is your name, right? I mean, gods always have names, right? Always have names, right? Whether it's Baal or one of the Baalim, whether it's I don't know, Ra, the sun god of Egypt, whether it's Chemosh or whatever, Tammuz, right? Gods always have names, and that's how you identify the god. But our God has never revealed or has never given his name, right? But this is important information, right? Because that's how you identify your gods, right? Okay. Verse 14. Why Yomer Elohim El Moshe Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh? Why Yomer Kut Tomar Livnei Israel Ehyeh Shelohani Elechem? So God answers. So God, I'll read it. I'm going to this is so important. I mean, obviously, we could spend literally 3, 4, 5 hours talking about these verses, but I'll translate it more or less literally. So God said to Moshe, I am who I am. Okay, or I will be who I will be. I like to translate it as I am who I am, right? Isn't that what Popeye said? I am who I am, and that's all that I am, or something like that, right? I am who I am. And he said, God said, in other words, so you shall say to the children of Israel, yeah, I am, sent me to you. Okay? Now, the important thing to point out is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am who I am, is not the name of God. And Ehyeh is not the name of God. Okay? The way the Torah works, and we've seen this many, many times, especially when we saw the names of, let's say, the children of Jacob, right? There's always an explanation, right, of why someone gets their name. Okay, so Yehuda is called Yehuda because I can't remember exactly word for word, but people will admit that I've had a child, right? It says Leah or something like that, right? I can't remember the words. I'd have to look it up. But there's always an explanation for a name, okay? And the name is always different from the explanation, and the explanation makes grammatical sense, and the name does not necessarily make grammatical sense. Yehuda is not a word that makes sense. It doesn't make grammatical sense. It doesn't have a meaning in Hebrew. It's a permutation of words that do, like yodu or yodeh, right? Yosef, okay, is not a word in Hebrew. It's Yosef or Esof or Osef, right? But Yosef is not a word in Hebrew, okay? Yaakov, well, Yaakov actually is, but so maybe that's a bad example. But most of the names do not have an actual meaning, okay? They're permutations of words that do have an actual meaning. So what we're getting here is not the name of God, even though it seems like it is. You have to understand how biblical Hebrew works and how the mentality or the mindset of the ancient Israelites and biblical Hebrew, which is that these are all explanations. Okay, so I will translate. So here it says literally, okay, Kotomar livnei Israel shilachani alechem. So it says, so shall you say to the children of Israel, I will be sent me to you. Okay, so this is not God revealing his name. This is just God saying to Moshe, this is how you're going to explain what my name is to the children of Israel. Okay, but that's not the name, right? The explanation is Ehyeh Esher Ehyeh, I am who I am. I am singular Israel. And then verse 15, Wayomer od Elohim el Moshe ko tomar el bnei Israel. And this shall you say to the children of Israel, Yahweh Elohei avotechem, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, shilachani alechem, ze shmi le'olam, wa ze zichri ledor dor. Okay, and so you shall say to the children of Moshe. Sorry. And then God said to Moshe, so you say to the children of Israel, Yahweh sent me to you, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my recollection, or the way you shall remember me from generation to generation. Right. So Moshe is going to go and say, and when the Israelites say, "Who sent you? What is the name of the God that sent you?" He's going to say, "Well, he has sent me." Okay, or I will be sent me, because his real name is Yahweh, but he's called Yahweh because it's based on the idea of I will be, right? That's essentially the message that Moshe is going to give to the children of Israel. And these verses in no way apply that the actual name is Ehyeh Sher Ehyeh, or that Ehyeh is the name. Only Yahweh is the name. Okay, so why is it written Yehovah? Okay, in this case it's not. There's no cholem over the hey. It's just written yud with a shva underneath, and then wow with a kamatz underneath, right? But why is it understood by some shoddy scholars to be Yehovah? Well, watch the video series, and it will be very eye-opening for you, and then you'll understand why I've now come to believe that the pronunciation is Yahweh and not Yehovah. At any rate, now the name is revealed. Yehovah, this is my name. It's very clear. This is my name forever, and this is my mention, the way you will remember me, or the way you will mention me from generation to generation. The name Yahweh is based on the name Ehyeh. So what does it mean, right? I will be who I will be. Well, I've spoken about this before, and I'll speak about it very, very briefly. I mean, again, we could be here for hours speaking about this, right? But I'm going to speak about it very briefly, and I always relate this to the book of Job, okay? The last chapter of the book of Job specifically. Let's look at it. I'm going to do the English. I'm not going to, we could be here for hours with the book of Job. I'm sorry, not the last chapter. Where is it? Last couple of chapters of Job, I should say. Okay, so this is when God speaks to Job out of the whirlwind, right? Who is this? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to give you the idea of what I want to try to say here, okay? Who is this that obscures my plans, with words without knowledge. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footing set? Who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Another indication that when God says in Genesis 1, let us make man, or let us do this, speaking about God and the angels. Anyway, who shut up the sea behind the doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness. And we'll skip ahead a little bit. It's very beautiful poetry. Okay. Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself with a flood of water? Did you send lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you, here we are? Who gives the ibis wisdom, or gives the rooster its understanding? One of the rabbinical prayers that rabbinical Jews say in the morning. It's in the Sech Livina. And it goes on, right? God's saying all of these things, right? Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? I gave it the wasteland as its home and the salt, right? I've done all of these things, okay? You know nothing, okay? You were not here when I made the earth. This is me. This is God speaking, right? In quotes, right? What do you know? Okay, you know nothing. Okay, I know. It sounds arrogant. I don't mean it in any arrogant way. God is extremely humble, right? That's one of the qualities of all righteous people and righteous entities, right? But you don't know what I know, so don't question. Don't think you know better than me. Okay, I created the earth. I was around long before you were. I will be around long after you are. Okay, and for you to try to tell me what I should or should not do is not right, because you don't have the information that I have to be able to make the decisions that I make. And that, in my opinion, is the essence of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I am who I am, okay? I know what I'm doing, or I do what I do, and I have my reasons for doing it. I'm God, not me. I don't have to explain myself to anybody, and you don't know, you don't have the wisdom I had. You weren't around as long as I've been. You didn't make the earth. You didn't create the earth. You didn't create the heavens, okay? So don't talk what you don't know about, okay? Don't question what you don't understand. I'm God. I am who I am, and I have my reasons for doing what I do, and that's it. That's God's answer, okay? Yes.
That's great. That is great.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah. That's what I think the end of this. That's what I think the entire book of Job is about. People say the book of Job is about faith, but it's really not. It's really not about faith. Yes, faith is an important part, right? Job never breaks his trust with God, but it's really about Job coming to understand that God knows what He's doing. It's really about trusting, blind trust of His Heavenly Father. Okay, just as Abraham had blind trust of his Heavenly Father when God commanded Abraham to go sacrifice his only true son Isaac. Right. This is the characteristics of great people in the Tanakh. Just as Moshe, even though he had not yet spoken to God, knew that he had to kill the Egyptian who was beating the Israelite. Right. Something deep down just said, this is what I have to do. Right. This is the idea that I am who I am tries to get across. It's not. So the book of Job is not a book about. It's not a book about suffering and getting your reward in the end. It's a book about trust. Job had true trust in God, and that's why the friends that came to comfort Job were so wrong, because they were trying to defend God as if they were defending God in a court of law, right? They were trying to blame Job and defend God, right? And by doing that, they're basically saying, God has to fit into our idea of what should be and what shouldn't be. And Job saw beyond that. Job said, no, that's not true. What God is doing, okay, what God is doing to me, He has no reason to do to me, okay? But He's not saying, but in the end, Job, not in the end, all along, Job realizes God has His reasons, okay? I don't understand them, but it's not that I've done wrong. I've done no wrong. God is punishing an innocent person. He has the right to do that because He's God, okay? I trust Him. I believe in Him, so I will not curse Him. I will not say anything bad against Him. I will not say anything against Him, because I, Job, know that whatever God does, even if I don't understand it, is right for reasons that I can't understand and I can't see, because I have not been around. I don't have the wisdom, and I've not been around this earth as long as he has, right? And that's exactly what the speech in the whirlwind at the end of the book of Job is all about, right? Because God says, God ironically comes and rebukes the friends who tried to defend him, right? God says, I don't need your defense. You don't know, Job is right. Job is right in saying that I've done something that should not have been done, but I have my reasons. And Job understood that. You're sitting here trying to defend me. By trying to defend me, you're basically saying that I'm wrong, okay? That I don't have reasons to do what I did, and that you're going to tell me what I should and shouldn't do. And the way you're going to do it is by saying Job deserved what he got. No, Job did not deserve what he got. But why did I do it? Because I'm God. I know what I'm doing, and I don't have to explain myself to anybody. I've been here a lot longer than you have, and I'll be a lot longer than you will be. And that's it. And that's exactly the idea, in my opinion, that's being expressed in this Ehiyeh, and
that's very profound. That and that also shoots all this garbage out the water about the rabbis and the oven and all that junk.
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, that's very profound. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
I always say that the answer to the mystery of the name of God is the book of Job. That's it. That's where the answer is.
Wow.
And the book of Job,
great.
the book of Job is very possibly, it's not even clear that it's a real story. It might just be ancient Israelite philosophy specifically designed to get this point across. Right?
Wow.
We don't question God, even if we don't understand why he does what he does. But if we love him, then we trust in him. And we know that even if we don't think we're getting what we deserve, that he has his reasons for doing what he's doing. And that's exactly, again, what Abraham knew when he was told to sacrifice his only son, and what Job knew when he refused to curse God, even though he knew he was being treated in a way that was uncalled for in his eyes, etc. So, all right, let's move on.
Blow me out the water. I love that.
Yeah, it's deep stuff. All right, verse 15. Where were we? Okay, no, we're up to verse 16. לך ואספת את זקני ישראל ואמרת אליהם יחווה אלוהי אבותיך נראה אליי אלוהי אברהם יצחק ויעקב לאמור פקוד פקדתי אתכם ועת עשוי לכם במצרים. So we have this word here, pakod pakadati, which is usually translated as I've visited, or I've recompensed, or something along those lines. But what it really means is I've decided now to turn my attention to such and such. Pakod pakadati. Okay, I've decided that now is the time to turn my attention towards you. Okay, it's again this idea of everything has a flow, everything has to happen in its right time and its right way. And now God has decided that this is it. This is the time. Okay, just like, who knows, all the stuff that's happening in the world right now, we don't see where it's all leading, but at a certain point we all have this feeling it's going to lead to something. Okay, it's getting close maybe, but it's not there quite yet. And when it does, it's going to be like, that's it. Now's the time, and something huge is going to happen. Who knows what that is? I don't even know. I don't even want to think about it, but it's that same idea. Okay. So it's now God is turning his attention. He is decided this is the time to act. This is the time to fulfill his promise to the patriarchs, and this is his time to take revenge on the nation that's oppressing the Israelites and to take them out of Egypt and bring them to the land of Israel. So I'll take you out of Egypt to the land flowing with milk and honey. It's all what Moshe is supposed to tell the Israelites. ואמרתם אליו יחווה אלוהי העבריים נקרא עלינו ועתה נלכה נא דרך 3 ימים במדבר ונזבחה ליחווה אלוהינו. So that's what he's supposed to say to Pharaoh. Okay, we have to go out to the desert to worship Yahweh, our God, for 3 days. ואני ידעתי כי לא ייתן אתכם מלך מצרים להלוך ולא ביד חזקה. So God knows that Pharaoh is not going to listen, not even when he, with a strong hand. He's going to have to really, right? He's going to have to basically destroy all of Egypt to finally get Pharaoh to say, oh, okay, I got it. This God is real. ושלחתי את ידי והכיתי את מצרים בכל נפלאותיי אשר אעשה בקרבו ואחרי כן ישלח אתכם. Okay, so right, so he's going to destroy, basically he's saying he's going to destroy Egypt, and only then is Pharaoh going to send you. ונתתי את חיי העם הזה ועיני מצרים וחיה כי תלכון לא תלכו ריקם. So you're not only going to leave, you're going to also despoil Egypt. You're going to take out all their possessions with you. ושאלה אישה משכנתה והוא מגרת ביתה כלי כסף וכלי זהב ושמלות ושמתם על בניכם ועל בנותיכם וניצלתם את מצרים. So they're going to give you vessels of silver, they're going to give you vessels of gold, they're going to give you raiments, whatever, clothes, and so you will despoil Egypt in that way. All right. Chapter 4.
And that could be where Puach and Shifra lucked out because they'd helped out and their houses were built up. And we were talking about that afterwards, and we said maybe they didn't even lose their firstborn.
I would imagine that's the case, right? They didn't. Again, we see in the Torah, right? So we know that all of the Canaanites are supposed to be destroyed, and yet Joshua decides to spare Rachav and her family, right? So when the Torah says destroy everyone, it doesn't mean destroy everyone. It means destroy everyone unless there's a reason not to. There are always exceptions on an individual basis. So we can assume, again, that either Shifra and Puah, either they stayed in Egypt and their households were built up, or maybe they were one of the people that came out into the desert, right? It speaks about the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude that came out into the desert with the Israelites. So maybe they came with the Israelites. Who knows? We don't know anything about them. We never hear from them again anywhere in the entire Tanakh. Okay. Exodus 4, verse 1. ויען משה ויאמר וכן לא יאמינו לי ולא ישמעו בקולי כי יאמרו לא נראה אליך יהוה. So what if they don't believe me? Verse 2. Okay, now we get the little parlor tricks. Okay? ויאמר אליו יהוה מה זה בידיך? ויאמר מטה. Okay, so God is asking a rhetorical question. What do you have in your hand? Oh, it's a staff, right? Often the way God works, God will say, what is this? Oh, well, now we're going to use this, okay? ויאמר השליחהו ארצה וישליחהו ארצה ויהי לנחש וינס משה מפניו. So it turns into a snake. Moshe gets scared and backs off. ויאמר יהוה אל משה שלח ידך ואחוז בזנבו וישלח ידו ויחזק בו ויהי למטה בכפו. Okay, so then he grabs it and turns back into a staff. Verse 5. למען יאמינו כי נראה אליך יהוה אלוהי אבותם אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב. Okay, so God gives him this, this kind of like dinky little parlor trick. Well, Moses works on Moses, but that's about the only one it's going to work on, right? So it's like, hey, Moses, what is that on your head? Oh, it's a top hat. Take that top hat off your head. Put your hand in it. What did you just pull out? Oh, it's a rabbit. Oh, you just pulled a rabbit out of your hat. Oh, wow. Like what magician can't imitate that, right? So why is God giving Moshe these stupid parlor tricks? Well, because again, everything has its time and everything has its place. God wants everything to be built up. God wants to succor Pharaoh and the Egyptian magicians and the wise men in by making him think that Moses is just doing silly little parlor tricks, because that's going to increase his arrogance. It's going to increase his recalcitrance, and that's going to create the opportunity for God to do what he really wants to do, which is multiply his signs and wonders, right? And to really smash Egypt to bits, to the point where Pharaoh is saying, get out, worship Yahweh, and ask him also to bless me, right? Whereas at the beginning, Pharaoh, one of my favorite lines is Pharaoh says, who is this God Yahweh? I don't know him, and I will not let you worship him. Well, in the end, as we're going to see in next week's Parsha, Pharaoh knows exactly who Yahweh is, because Yahweh is the one who's destroyed his kingdom And so much so does he know who Yahweh is. He's begging Moshe to ask Yahweh to give him a blessing, or to ask Moshe to bless him in the name of Yahweh. Okay, verse 6. ויאמר יהוה לא עוד הווה נא ידך בחיקך. I'm sorry. ויאמר יהוה לא עוד הווה נא ידך בחיקך, ויבא ידו בחיקו, ויוציאה, והנה ידו מסורעת כשלח. So here we get the second parlor trick. Stick your hand in your cloak, pull it out, and it's going to be all, well, they usually translate it as leprous, but we saw last year when we were studying the book of Leviticus, it's a poor translation. So usually like scaly or white and scaly, or just not looking too good. ויאמר השב ידך אל חיקך, וישב ידו אל חיקו, ויוציאה מחיקו, והנה שבה כי בשרו. And put it back in, pull it out, and it returns to its original look, right? So this reminds me again of, oh God, where is, it's in the Matrix again, right? This is why I know it's known that the Matrix is so heavily based on the, well, not only on the Tanakh, they also use a lot of New Testament stuff, but obviously I'll stick with the Tanakh part. And there's a part where Morpheus is kind of teaching Neo these parlor tricks, right? So I think he's teaching him, what is it, to jump across a building or something like that. And no, that's where he falls. I can't remember. He's teaching him these parlor tricks, and Neo's like really impressed. Like he thinks he's learning something, but what he doesn't realize is that he's really not learning anything. He's just getting these like little parlor tricks. And it's impressive to Neo because he knows nothing, but it's not impressive to Morpheus because he knows a lot more. It's the same idea here. Moshe's impressed by all these parlor tricks, but God knows that these are just stupid parlor tricks that the Egyptians are going to be easily able to imitate, at least the first couple, until they're not. وحيا لو يأمينوا لך ולא ישמעו לכל האות הראשון והאמינו לכל האות האחרון. Is that true? No, it's not true. They're not going to believe the second one either. وحيا אם לא יאמינו גם לשני האות האלה. And this is a very important point, right? So what, doesn't it seem like the Torah is directly contradicting itself? Verse 8 says, if they don't believe you, and they don't listen to the first sign, which is the snake, the staff turning into the snake, right? Then they're going to listen to the second sign, which is the leprous hand, right? That's what God's saying. They're going to listen. They're going to believe the second one, right? But then verse 9 contradicts that. If they don't believe the second one, okay, then you take the waters of the Nile, and it becomes blood, okay? So doesn't it seem like a direct contradiction? Verse 8 says, if they don't believe the first one, they'll believe the second one. And then verse 9 says, if they don't believe the second one, then here's the third one, right? It's not Torah contradicting itself. Verse 8 just said they're going to believe the second one. It just, again, shows how incorrect the modern Western linear Greek/Roman, mentality is. That's not really what the Torah is saying, or that's not really the way that the Torah and the Tanakh works, okay? The Torah and the Tanakh are work in a kind of different, shall we say, more fluid mentality. So when it says they'll believe this, if they don't believe the first, they'll believe the second one. Okay, it's just explaining the narrative step by step, right? So how can you translate it? I don't know if there is a way to translate it into English, but maybe something along the lines: if they don't believe the first one, then perhaps they'll believe the second one. Okay, or they will believe the second one. But if they don't believe the second one, then here's a third one, right? I'm trying to find the words to explain it. It's just it's a different mentality, okay? They should believe the second one, or it's not even applying it. It's saying they will believe the second one, but will believe the second one doesn't mean they actually will believe the second one, okay? It means that they should believe the second one, or ought to believe the second one, or something along those lines. And that even doesn't really express it. It's just a different mentality. It's a different way of seeing things. Okay, I can't find the words right now, so I'm not even going to try to find them. Okay, verse 10. Why yomer Moshe el Yahweh bi Adonai lo ish divarim anochi gam mitmol gam mishilshom gam az dabercha el avdecha ki kvad peh kvad lashon anochi. Moshe says, I'm not a man of words, not yesterday and not the day before, and not from whenever you started speaking to me. One second here. Well, when did God start speaking to him? He just started speaking to him like 5 minutes ago, right? This is the same. Moshe hasn't moved from the burning bush. This is all taking place at the burning bush. Okay? Right? On Moshe, right here. This Moshe answered and said, right? So what is Moshe talking about? What do you mean from the day you started speaking to me? God only started speaking to him 5 minutes ago. It just shows again that this kind of a different use of language and that we see. Yes.
Melech.
Yes.
Some time ago, you sent me a document about the free will and determination.
Yeah. Which
And
I
I think, could this have something to do with that? The thought that, you know, he's saying, Yahweh is saying, you know, if they don't believe the first one, they'll believe the second. Well, is he saying, I'm giving man his own free will? Is he giving the free will and saying, I'm not going to determine that it has to be that way? Is he refusing to read the future there? It kind of goes along with what you said in that article.
Right. I see what you're saying. So just to clarify what Ariel is speaking about, I wrote an article, which I still haven't finished, and I really should, which is that the age-old discussion, or the age-old seeming contradiction between free will and determinism or predeterminism, the answer to it, in my opinion, is that man has 100% free will, and at the same time there's 100% determinism. And what does that mean? How do we understand that? We can't. Just like we can't understand the idea of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I am who I am. Just like we can't understand why God did to Job what he did, and he never explains himself. Okay, and yet Job still trusted that God was doing what he needed to do for whatever reason. Okay, it's the same idea. Okay, how can we explain that there's both 100% free will and at the same time 100% determinism? We can't. It's something beyond our ability, something beyond our grasp. It's like trying to picture the fourth dimension. I once had a friend who was a little bit of a weird person who claimed that he was able to see in 4 dimensions, and of course that was not true. But we just can't, right? It's beyond our ability to understand. So that's what Ariel is referencing, and if I understand what you're saying here, these phrases that God is saying, if they don't believe the first, they'll believe the second. If they don't believe the second, they'll believe the third. It's that kind of skirting that issue of God is not predicting the future here, or at the same time he's not predicting the future, but he does know what the future will hold. This free will and determinism. I think it's an interesting point, Ariella. I think that's a very good point. So all right, let's move on. All right. Okay, we were here. Blah blah blah. Okay, verse 9, the third parlor trick, which again the Egyptian magicians are able to create. The last one they'll be able to reproduce is turning the waters of the Nile into blood. Verse 10, Wayomer Moshe el Yahweh, Bi Adonai lo ish. Oh, we just read that. Okay. Right. So, you know, since he started talking to me, it makes it sound like they've been talking for like years. No, they just started talking. This is still a continuation of the burning bush, as far as I can see, unless I missed something, but I believe it is. So they just started talking maybe, an hour ago, 10 minutes ago? Who knows, right? So it's just a strange statement. It's just that Moshe is really, it's expressing the idea, in my opinion. Moshe really doesn't want anything to do with this. He feels he's way in over his head. This has got to be a mistake. You've chosen the wrong guy. You know, please God, you know, go check your notes, go check your files, because this is, you know, I'm nothing. I'm just some guy who just, you know, fled from my life, and I'm a shepherd, and you know, you've obviously, you know, made a serious mistake here. So please just, you know, let's end this now. That's basically what Moshe is saying. Verse 11, Wayomer Yahweh elav mi sam pe le'adam o mi yasum ilem o heresh o pikeh or iwer halo anochi Yahweh. So God is again saying, or, you know, I run, you know, I know what I'm doing here. All right, don't worry. Right? Maybe that's also referring back to the I will be, right? So I'm going to tell you what to say. Okay, second chance, and Moshe still doesn't want it, right? You know, send someone else, send whoever you want to send, but not me. Okay, so now Moshe has turned down So the first time, Moshe said no, and God said, hey, don't worry, I'm with you. And Moshe said, no, that's not good enough for me. No, I don't want this job. So now it's almost like God is, shall we say, punishing, or God is maybe punishing / you're also trying to find solutions that work for them, or help them. So there's some realization here or there's some punishment that Moshe is just, he really doesn't want the job. So I guess it is kind of a punishment. Okay, you don't want the job, you're not going to get the job. Now we're going to get Aaron involved. Okay, Har af Yahweh, right? And God became angry. Literally, his nose flared with fire, right? His nose breathed fire. Yahweh b'Moshe wayomer halo Aaron achicha halewi. ידעתי כי ידבר הוא וגם הנה הוא יוצא לקראתך ורעך ושמח בליבו. Okay, so now God, to make a long story short, brings Aaron into the picture. Aaron's going to be happy to see you. He's on his way. Let's get him involved. ודיברת אליו ושמת את הדברים בפיו ואנוכי אהיה עם פיך. Ehiyah, here we go again. Ehiyah, we see the word Ehiyah appear a bunch of times. Okay, Ehiyah asher Ehiyah, right? And I believe this is on purpose. Anochi Ehiyah im picha wa im pihu horeti etchem et asher ta'asum. Okay, so I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with him. Oops. So I'm going to be in your mouth. Okay, so literally, verse 15. What dibate elav v'samta et devarim befiv. So you shall speak to him, and you shall place the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth, and with his mouth. So basically, Moshe is going to speak to God. I'm sorry, God's going to speak to Moshe, and then Moshe is going to speak to Aaron. That's the way it's going to work. Okay, and it even says later that Moshe is going to be like the prophet. I'm sorry, Moshe is going to be like the God, and Aaron is going to be like the prophet. Right? So now an intermediary is brought in. Moshe is demoted, basically, right? Okay, you can't hack it. You're gonna, excuse my French, you're gonna bitch and moan. Okay, no problem. You're done. We're not gonna give you that job. You're not gonna get the promotion to, vice president. We're gonna give you or to senior vice president. We'll give you vice president instead. Okay, verse 16. Wa diber hu lecha el ha'am wa haya hu yeh lecha lepe. ואתה תהיה לו לאלוהים, ואת המטה הזה תיקח בידיך אשר תעשה בו את האותות. So, ודיבר הוא לך אל העם, so he's going to speak on your behalf to the people. והיה הוא יהיה לך לפה, he's going to be for you as a mouthpiece. אתה תהיה לו לאלוהים, and you're going to be for him like a god. So basically, Aaron is going to be your prophet, and you're going to be like a god. So actually, again, it just goes to show that even when God punishes, he's actually kind of rewarding, because in a certain sense, yes, he's punishing Moshe and he's really mad at Moshe, but he's actually in a certain sense raising Moshe up, because now Moshe is going to look like the God and Aaron is going to look like the prophet, right? Okay, and take the staff with you. All right, verse 18. וילך משה וישב אל יתר חותנו. And here we have again, so we already saw him called Ruel and Yitro, and now he's called Yeter. So you could say it's a fourth name, but really it's just an alternative form of Yitro, of Jethro. Okay, his father-in-law. ויאמר לו אלך נא ואשובה. Wow, it's already late. I'm going to have to end this pretty soon. ואשובה אל אחי אשר במצרים ואראה דם חיים. ויאמר יתרו למשה לך לשלום. So Yitro is a good guy, right? He helps Moshe later out in the desert in Exodus chapter 17, I believe it is. And now he's, just the opposite of Lavan. Moshe, right? We see the contrast, right? Moshe was tending to the flock of Lavan, and Moshe said, we saw that in Genesis 30, I think it was, right? Moshe wants to go and build his own house, and Lavan basically tricks him into staying for another 6 years. Contrast this, right? Same kind of story, right? I'm sorry, did I say Moshe? I meant Yaakov, right? Yaakov and Lavan. And now Moshe is here with his father-in-law, okay, right? That's also that Lavan was Yaakov's father-in-law twice over, right? But Yitro has a completely different attitude. Moshe says, I want to go, and Yitro says, go in peace, right? get out of here. What to do, my friend? My son, and sends him off. Right? It's beautiful. We see the contrast. Right? They're both. Moshe is essentially in the same situation. He's tending to the flock of his father-in-law. He's married to his father-in-law's daughter. By definition, that's why it's his father-in-law. It's the same with Yaakov, right? But Yaakov tries to get away, and Lavan tries to trick him. Moshe tries to get away, and Yitro says, "Go in peace. Go do what you got to do. Okay, I got your back." And later, Yitro's not only going to do that, he's going to come meet Moshe in the desert and give Moshe advice. And so he's a good guy, right? We can see that Jethro is a good guy. Verse 20, ויקח משה את אשתו ואת בניו וירכיבם על החמור וישב ארצה מצרים ויקח משה את מטה האלוהים בידו. So off they go with his wife and his son. It says his sons at this point, right? But we only heard about one son, and that was Gershom. Okay, but we will talk about the other son eventually. Verse 21. ויאמר יהוה אל משה בלכתך לשוב מצרימה ראה כל המופתים אשר שמתי בידיך ועשיתם לפני פרעה ואני אחזק את ליבו ולא ישלח את העם. Okay, so I'm going to harden his heart and he won't send the people away. ואמרת אל פרעה כה אמר יהוה בני בכורי ישראל. Oh, this is such a loaded statement. We could spend 2 hours, 3 hours on the statement alone, okay? You shall say to Pharaoh, so says Yahweh, B'ni B'chori Yisrael, Israel is my son, my firstborn son. Oh, God. Here we go with the firstborn again, right? We have seen so many instances of the firstborn, okay? Later on, the firstborn in the 10th plague are the ones that are going to be killed, right? We saw all the reversals of the firstborn. Menashe versus Ephraim, Esav versus Yaakov, Yosef attains the status of firstborn, right? Because he gets a double inheritance, the double portion being broken up into Menashe and Ephraim, as opposed to the true firstborn, Reuven, who's thrown off the perch, and on and on and on and on. The idea of the firstborn and reversal of the firstborn is it's a basic theme in the Torah. It's a basic theme that appears again and again. Here we don't have reversal of the firstborn, but we have again reference to the firstborn. So wherever you see firstborn, watch out. It's a loaded topic. There's a lot going on there that harkens all the way back to our patriarchs. Okay, verse 23. What we see also later on the firstborn, right? In Exodus chapter 13, we're going to have the Pidyon Ben, right? That you're going to redeem your firstborn. The firstborn was supposed to be dedicated in response to God killing the firstborn of Egypt. The firstborn of Israel were supposed to be dedicated to God. In other words, they were the ones who were supposed to be the priests. But there's a Pidyon Ben, there's a redemption whereby the Levites are replaced, or the firstborns are replaced by the Levites. Okay? So that's again exchange of the firstborn. This idea of the firstborn, or this theme of the firstborn, is huge. It's so much so we could say it's a basic theme in the Torah. Okay, verse 23. وَعُمَارْ إِلَيْخَ شَلَخْ إِنْ بِنِي وَيَعَذَّنِي وَتِمْ مُعِينِ شَلْخُ وَحِينِ أَنُخِي خُرَيْخ إِتْ بِنْخَا بِخُرَيْخَ. You don't send my firstborn, I'm going to kill your firstborn. Right? So that's going to be foreshadowing, because Moshe is going to say that to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's going to laugh at him. What do you mean you're going to kill my firstborn? Hello, you're doing stupid parlor tricks. You're pulling bunnies out of top hats. You're going to kill my firstborn? Haha. Just wait, Pharaoh. Just wait. Why he baderech bi malon why if gishehu Yahweh uyivakesh hamito. And now God wants to kill Moses. All of a sudden, why? He forgot to circumcise his son. What gach sipora sor. Flint وتخرط את أورلاد منا وتجع للرجال وتمر كي حتان ضميم تا أعطى لي ويرف ممنه عز عمره حتان ضميم لمولتي لا مولت. So we have this whole incident of they're in the inn, in the caravanserai, and something's going on with a foreskin, and Zipporah grabs the flint, circumcises the son, throws the foreskin at the floor, and says, "You're a hatan damim. You are a bridegroom of blood." Regarding, or a bridegroom of blood for foreskins. Very obscure, very mysterious. We've spoken about it more extensively last year. I'm not going to get into it right now, except to say that it's clear that that Moses, for whatever reason, did not circumcise his son on the 8th day as he was supposed to, right? And God is really mad because that is the sign of the covenant. Okay, I have a friend who was born Jewish. His grandmother was in Auschwitz, and he became such a antagonistic towards the religion. I mean, he's very well knowledgeable in Torah and Talmud and all this kind of stuff, but he became so antagonistic towards the religion that he, when he had his first son, he would not circumcise the first son. And at that point, I cut off contact with him. I mean, if he calls, I won't hang up on him, but I don't go out of my way to find this person because it's just it's offensive to me that someone whose grandmother survived the Holocaust would not even, and who knows better, who grew up basically religious, rabbinically religious, but Orthodox rabbinical religious, basically, would not circumcise his firstborn son or any of his sons. I can't even speak to a person like that, quite frankly. This is such a violation of what we're asked to do by the Torah. Verse 28, ויגד משה לאהרון את כל דברי יהוה אשר שלחו ואת כל העובדות אשר ציווהו. וילך משה ואהרון ויאספו את כל זקני בני ישראל וידבר אהרון את כל הדברים אשר דיבר יהוה אל משה. יעש אותות לעיני העם. So now he's doing the signs, his little parlor tricks. What? Yeah, amen. What? Yishma'u ki faqad Yahweh et bnei Israel wachi ra'a et onyam wa iqdu wa yishtahawu. Okay. So the children of Israel are happy. They believed, but it ain't so simple, right? Okay, so this is the last chapter. I'm just going to basically go through it quickly because we've been going at it for 3 hours here, and I'm getting tired and hungry. وأحر بأو مشى وأهرون ويمروا البرؤ كم أمر يهوه إلهي إسرائيل شلح إت عمي ويحجوا لي بمدبر. So let my people go. This is the famous "Let my people go" line. I mean, the first one. Let my people go. God, I could spend an hour on this. Okay, this is one of my favorite lines in the entire book of Exodus. Excuse me. Et Yahweh. וגם את ישראל לא אשלח. So Moses comes and sings the song to Pharaoh, let my people go. And what does Pharaoh say? What does Pharaoh says? What does Pharaoh say? Me, Yahweh. Who's God? Who is Yahweh? I love it. That's the first interchange between Moses and Pharaoh. The first words out of Pharaoh's mouth to Moses are me, Yahweh. Who's Yahweh? Go away. Don't bother me with your little fantasy. Your little imaginary friends in the sky, okay? I don't have time for your nonsense. Get back to work, right? I have a friend, quote unquote friend, who constantly taunts me with the same idea, right? You go believe in your stupid Torah. You go believe in your little, your spaghetti monster. What is it? Your spaghetti, whatever they call it, the great spaghetti monster in the sky, and your imaginary friend who you think is gonna, who's going to save you and punish you and reward you, basically taunts me. And it's the same idea here. But we know in the end, everyone finds out who Yahweh is. You find it out either the easy way, the good way, or you find it out the bad way. But in the end, every single creation, every single human being, no matter how good or how bad they are going to know who Yahweh is. And they're going to bend their knee and bow down before him, whether they do it out of love or they do it out of being forced to. ويومر paro mi Yahweh. Who is Yahweh? Asher shema b'kolo. Who is Yahweh? Who is this Yahweh that I should listen to his voice? Shalach et Yisrael, that I should and send away Israel. Lo yadati et Yahweh. I have no idea who this Yahweh is. I've never heard of this Yahweh before. V'gam et Yisrael lo shalach, and I have no intention of sending Israel. I love it. Oh, he's going to know who Yahweh is. So Moshe clarifies, the God of the Hebrews is called to us. It's called upon us. We just want to go for 3 days. Be right back. Just hang tight. We're not leaving. We're just going for 3 days. במדבר ונזבחה ליהוה אלוהינו פן יפגענו בדבר או בחרב. So we just want to go for 3 days and sacrifice to Yahweh, our God, lest he hurt us with bedever, so with some kind of disease. You translate it as pestilence or something like that, or with the sword. Isn't that interesting? That one of the 10 plagues is going to be dever, it's going to be pestilence, and in the end, well, it's not quite the sword, but there's going to be the first one that are killed, right? But Moshe's playing psychological games with Pharaoh, right? He's saying, you don't have to believe in this God. Okay, so he's our imaginary friend, but just let us go because we're afraid he's gonna hurt us. Okay, so and we're only going for 3 days, right? Moshe's he's putting the bar very low. That's Pharaoh. All he has to do is just give a little bit, a tiny drop, right? We're not saying we're going to leave and never come back. We'll come right back. But Pharaoh won't budge, not at all. Even if he sees that Israel's fears they're going to get hurt for not worshiping their imaginary friend, right? Verse 4, Yomer Alehem Melech Misraim Lama Moshe wa Aharon tafri'u am mi ma'asaw lechu lisivlotechem. Okay, get back to work. Get out. You're bothering me. Scat. Get out of here. Skidoodle. ויאמר פרעה הן רבים אתה עם הארץ והשבתם אותם מסבלותם. So again, brings up there's a lot of Israelites, right? That underlying fear, the fear of the Jew, right? But he brings it up in the context of you're keeping them from their work. But secretly, he says that there's a lot of them, right? Again, that fear that he has of being so many Israelites that they're gonna leave the land, or they're gonna team up with the enemies of the land and then leave. It's up Paro biyom hahu et nochshim ba'am wa'et shotrao lemor. So now he's gonna make the situation even worse for Israel. Lo tosifun latet teven la'am lilbon ha'venim kitmol shivshom hem yelchu ve'kosheshu lohem teven. So now you have to go. Now you have to go get your own straw. Okay, so the situation is worse, not better. Has Moshe helped? No. In the eyes of the Israelites, now he's made the situation even worse. Wa'eth מתכונת הלבנים אשר הם עושים תמול שפשום תשימו עליהם לא תגרעו ממנו כי נרפים הם על כן הם צועקים לאמור נלכה ונזבחה לאלוהינו. So they're slackers. I think they usually translate this as lazy, but really I think it should be slackers because I believe it's related to the same word as Rifaim, even though Rifaim has an aleph in it. Rifaim are kind of like these they usually translate as ghosts. It's a poor translation, but like these souls that are released from the body. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I would say they're slackers, right? So Pharaoh saying, get back to work. You don't have enough work. That's why you're thinking about, Pharaoh is giving them a lesson. Idleness leads to sin, right? The reason you're coming up with all these crazy ideas about worshiping your imaginary spaghetti monster, your stupid imaginary friend in the sky, is because you don't have enough work. So I'm going to give you more work. Okay. Okay, don't waste your time with these stupid ideas, with these lies. I'm going to give you more work. Get back to work. Verse 10. Okay, so now the Israelites find out about the new matkonet, the new setup, the new equation that they have to produce the same amount of bricks, but they have to find their own straw. So now go get your own straw. Verse 12. עם מכל ארץ מצרים לקושש קש לתבן. So now the Israelites scattered around looking for a straw. Verse 13. והנוגשים עשים לאמור. In modern Hebrew, laha'itz is to accelerate. So atzim they usually translate as like to pressure or to drove, pressing them. Okay, laha'itz, atz means to like press on the gas, I guess, or to go faster. Okay. Atzim lemor kalu ma'asechem devar yom biyomo kasher biyotam teven. So again, just reinforcing this idea, you have to come up with your own straw. ויכו שוטרי בני ישראל אשר שמו עליהם נוחשי פרעה לאמור מדוע לא כיליתם חכם ליבון כתמול שלשום גם תמול גם היום. Here we have the Judenrat or the capos in the concentration camps. These are the shotrim. Okay, verse 15, almost done. ויבואו שוטרי בני ישראל ויצעקו אל פרעה לאמור למה תעשה כל עבדיך. So now the capos in the concentration camp are complaining back to Pharaoh. ותבן אין ניתן לעבדיך ולבנים אומרים לנו עשו והנה עבדיך מוכים וחטאת עמך. So we have the nogshim. Where is it? Nogshe Pharaoh. These are the Pharaoh's taskmasters. Below that we've got the shotrim, shotrei bnei Israel. These are the Jews, the Israelites who are to make sure the Israelite police officers or officers who are to make sure the Israelites still fill their quota, and then we have the Israelites. So it's just like in the concentration camps, right? Nokshe Paro, these are the SS guards. The Shotrei Bnei Israel, these are the whatever they call them, the capos or the Judenrat. I think it's two different things, but we call them the capos. And then we have the Jews who are being enslaved and worked to death. Kind of, not quite to death, but worked hard. Okay, verse 17. I think we're up to 17. Vayomer nirpaim atem. You guys are slackers. Nirpaim al ken atem omrim. You lazy bums, get to work. Avodah, Arbeit macht frei. Avodah, work makes you free, right? That's basically Pharaoh's really like Hitler, kind of, right? Okay, so again, not repetition, but the reinforcement of this idea. You have to come up with the same amount of bricks. ויראו שוטרי בני ישראל אותם ברע לאמור לו תראו מלבניכם דבר יום ביומו. So then the capos pressed Israel to do that. ויפגעו את משה ואת אהרון ניצבים לקראתם. And then the Israelites run into Aaron and Moshe coming out of Pharaoh's office, out of his castle or whatever. So, oh boy, they're not happy with Aaron and Moshe. They definitely did not help with all this talk you gave us about God is coming to save us. And what do you mean God is coming to save us? You made the situation worse. Better you never showed up at all. יבאשתם את רעינו מעיני פרעה ועיני עבדיו לתת חרב בידם להרגנו. You lied to us. You said God appeared to you. And what have you done instead? You've hevashtem derechenu. You've made us our smell stink in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of his servants, referring again to the Nokshim, to the taskmasters. What you've basically done is you've put a sword in their hand to kill us, right? So the Israelites are not happy. Moshe goes back to Yahweh. Yashav Moshe el Yahweh wa yomar Adonai lama ha're'otva l'am hazeh lama zeh shelachtani. Okay, why? What are you doing? Like, are you crazy? I mean, you made the situation worse. Why do you even send me? מאז באתי אל פרעה לדבר בשמך הרע לעם הזה ועצר לא הצלת את העם. And since I came, the situation is only worse. You didn't save the nation, right? Moshe is mad at God or upset. And the final verse in our parsha, ויאמר יהוה אל משה אתה תראה אשר אעשה לפרעה כי ביד חזקה ישלחם וביד חזקה יגרשם מארצו. So Moshe says, God says, I'll translate it word for word. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, so Yahweh said to Moshe, אתה תראה אשר אעשה לפרעה. Now you'll see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. ביד חזקה ישלחם, because he's going to send them away literally with a strong hand. He's going to push them out of there. Okay? And with a strong hand, he's gonna kick them out of his land. Okay? And that's it. That's the end of the parsha. All right. Any comments? Any questions before we end? It's been a long study. It's been over 3.5 hours, actually close to 4 hours. About 3.5 hours. I love these, this parsha. I love all of Genesis, all of Exodus, the stories, and then even Leviticus is fascinating. Well, it's all fascinating. So there we go. If there are no questions and no comments, Shavua Tov Yoshi Ben, again, contact me. If you look at the original post for the teaching, you'll see. You're welcome, Phil. So nice to see you at these studies. Really great to reconnect. So Yoshi Ben, if you look at the original post for the study, you will see that there's a WhatsApp group, the World Alliance of Qara'im WhatsApp group. If you join that World Alliance of Qara'im WhatsApp group, I will communicate with you there, and then we can talk privately, okay? So, and I can explain to you how you can, if you really want to leave the United States and go to Israel, how you can do that. All right, so that's it. Thank you all for joining. Let's leave with a nice song. And Be'ezrat Yahweh, we will see you all next week. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov.
Shema tzedakah אדנו יודע תעלמו אנא בכור גדולת ימינך הגיל צרומה קבל רינה עמך סגדנו תארנו שבתנו גדל ושמע צעקתנו יודע תעלמו אנא בכור גדולת ימינך בכור